Chapter 38:11. Ao Zhantian nodded with a smile. Yes, Shui Mingzi had discussed this with me before. However, I had an important matter to attend to, so I didn't agree to his request. Today, I came here to discuss this matter with Taoist Master. Xiao Hua was stunned. What do you want to discuss with me? Ao Zhantian pondered for a moment and sent a voice transmission. Do you know about Dragon Island? Xiao Hua's heart skipped a beat. What do you mean by that? Which cultivator on the hidden Immortal continent doesn't know about Dragon Island? If you have the opportunity to go to Dragon Island, would you be willing? Ao Zhantian stared at Xiao Hua's face as if he wanted to see through his true thoughts. If Xiao Hua hadn't met Ao Zhantian, he would have been very interested in Ao Zhantian's suggestion. However, it was clear that Ao Zhantian's so-called opportunity wouldn't be as good as Ao Zhantian's. Xiao Hua couldn't help but hesitate. After thinking for a moment, Xiao Hua asked in a low voice, "Can you tell me the reason behind this matter?" Alright. Ao Zhantian saw Xiao Hua's hesitation and had a bad feeling. After thinking for a moment, he decided to tell him everything. After Ao Zhantian finished explaining everything, Xiao Hua stroked his chin and fell into deep thought. The reason why Ao Zhantian's surname was Ao was because there was an additional person in his surname compared to the Ao of the Dragon Palace. This meant that he was a distant relative of the Dragon Palace's bloodline. This was also what Xiao Hua had seen at the Jade Pavilion conference. Ao Zhantian had the Crimson Dragon bloodline and could use the True Spirit avatar. Of course, Ao Zhantian's bloodline existed in both the human and demon races. The Dragon Palace didn't really care about them. However, these demons and humans were all descendants of the dragon bloodline. Therefore, every 100 years, the Dragon Palace would hold a selection ceremony to select the purer and more powerful disciples to enter Dragon Island. However, Ao Zhantian and the other descendants of the dragon bloodline only had 3 chances. If they couldn't set foot on Dragon Island after 3 chances, they would lose the right to enter Dragon Island. The Dragon Island was a mysterious place. It was as famous as the Immortal Palace, the Thunder Temple, and the Great Sage Hall. There were countless treasures on the island. If an ordinary cultivator could obtain even one of them, they would be able to take a huge step forward in their cultivation. Although this Dragon Island's training area wasn't the core of the Dragon Island, in order to obtain this opportunity, these descendants with the dragon's bloodline would fight until their heads bled every time. And what made them satisfied was that as long as they could survive the Dragon Island, without exception, they would reap great rewards. There had never been an exception. Coincidentally, 10 years later, it would be the time for the 100-year selection. Ao Zhantian had already participated in the selection ceremony twice, and he had failed to obtain the right to enter the Dragon Island. This was his last chance. Moreover, if Ao Zhantian passed the selection ceremony, even if he didn't gain anything from the Dragon Island, his name would be recorded in the register of the Dragon Palace. Even if he reached the out-of-aperture stage in the future, the Immortal Palace wouldn't force him too much out of consideration for the Dragon Palace. Thus, Ao Zhantian placed great importance on this selection, which was why he had come to ask Xiao Hua for help. Xiao Hua thought for a moment, and thought to himself, I can use Ao Zhan to enter the Dragon Island, but the problem is whether Ao Qian can be rescued. Even if Ao Qian is rescued, the East Sea Dragon Palace will definitely look for the culprit behind Ao Qian's assassination. In that case, they will inevitably look for me. I have a history with the Heavenly Cave River, and I know the ins and outs of the Dragon Island. If I go to Ao Zhan, not only will he betray me, but the people of the Dragon Palace will also interrogate me. Wouldn't I be walking right into their trap? Rather than taking that risk, I might as well follow Ao Zhantian. Either way, there are humans and demons here, and it'll be easier to avoid them. Taoist Ao? Xiao Hua asked, this selection is an opportunity for your dragon bloodline descendants. What does it have to do with me? Of course it has to do with me. Ao Zhantian laughed. I can bring my guards to participate in the selection. This is the rule of the Dragon Palace. Once I pass the selection, my guards can also follow me to the Dragon Island. Damn it, you're a nascent soul cultivator of the Tao Gate. Why do you need guards? Xiao Hua asked, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. Ao Zhantian shrugged and replied, I have no choice. This is the custom of the Dragon Palace. If the descendants of the Dragon Palace don't bring guards, then they're not descendants of the Dragon Palace. Even if I don't bring guards, those arrogant demons and Confucian cultivators will. And I understand. Xiaohua nodded. But where will the selection be held this time? The North Sea Dragon Palace is hosting the selection this time. Ao Zhantian explained. As for where it is, we'll only know when we arrive at the designated place. The North Sea Dragon Palace. Xiaohua smiled. As long as it wasn't the East Sea Dragon Palace or the West Sea Dragon Palace, Xiaohua was willing to go. Alright. Xiaohua nodded. If that's the case, I'll go with you and try my luck. Good. Ao Zhantian clapped. I knew that Taoist Master Xiao would definitely lend me a hand. Now, I'll go with you. Ah? So soon? Xiaohua was a little surprised. Why don't we hurry up? Ao Zhantian asked curiously. The hidden Immortal continent is currently in a dangerous situation. Who knows when the heavenly Immortal Palace will send their fury down? If we rush to the North Sea Dragon Palace's territory now, even if the heavenly Immortal Palace wants to vent their anger on us, they won't be able to do anything to us. Besides, I've already prepared a lot for this selection. Fellow Taoist doesn't need to prepare anything. You just need to follow me. Although Xiaohua knew that Ao Zhantian and Xue Mingzi were right, he really couldn't leave. After thinking for a moment, Xiaohua smiled. How about this? Fellow Taoist Ao, you tell me the designated place of the North Sea Dragon Palace and I promise to arrive in 10 years. How about that? Oh, alright. It seems like that's the only way. Seeing that Xiaohua had already made up his mind, Ao Zhantian didn't force him. Just like Xue Mingzi, he took out his own token and a jade eye ring and handed them to Xiaohua before turning to leave. However, before Ao Zhantian left, he didn't forget to turn back and say, also, Taoist Master Xiao, we've gathered here for too long. Perhaps we've already attracted the attention of the Confucian cultivators. If we fall into the heavenly Immortal Palace's ears, it will definitely be detrimental to the Black Wind Ridge. You should prepare early. And I understand. I'll have to trouble fellow Taoists to inform the other fellow Taoists that I'll be holding a farewell banquet tomorrow morning and invite all fellow Taoists to attend. Xiaohua had already thought of a plan. But the last stone in Ao Zhantian's heart was lifted and he left with a smile. There was no need to mention the farewell banquet. Xiaohua raised his cup and the other cultivators also raised their cups. According to the blood oath, as long as Xiaohua needed them for 1,000 years, they would be at his beck and call. Of course, other than the early nascent soul cultivator Royal Highness Lan, there were many golden core cultivators who decided to stay in the Black Wind Ridge after seeing how prosperous the Fortune Gate was. After the banquet, the group of cultivators bid farewell and flew out in batches. However, there were too many Taoist cultivators working for Xiaohua. In order not to attract the attention of the Confucian cultivators, these cultivators flew for an entire day before gradually dispersing. Xue Mingzi and Ao Zhantian were the last to leave the capital star formation. There was no one else in the Black Wind Ridge anymore. Xiaohua turned around and walked into his cave. Xiaohua had just sat down in his cave when Royal Highness Lan came in with dozens of golden core cultivators. As soon as Royal Highness Lan entered the cave, he immediately bowed and said, Taoist Master Xiao, I have chatted with fellow Taoist Xiong a few times in the past few days. Although fellow Taoist Xiong did not tell me too much, I already know quite a bit about what happened in the country of Jianghu. Now that I've reached a bottleneck in my cultivation, I'm especially worried about my lifespan. Since I've already made a blood oath to serve Taoist for 500 years, I don't have much time to squander after these 500 years. Rather than that, why don't I just become Taoist's disciple and receive your guidance? Junior is also willing to become Taoist Zhao's disciple. About 20 golden core cultivators bowed and said in unison. Xiaohua looked at Royal Highness Lan and thought inwardly. Royal Highness Lan was also saved by him during the Jadestage conference. This cultivator's shrewdness was above Xiong Yi's, and his ability to judge the situation was even better than Xiong Yi's. In the short few years he had been in the Black Wind Ridge, he had seen a lot of things, such as the Origin Stone Mine, the capital star formation, and the battle between Jiang country and Copper Pillar country. However, Xiaohua looked at these cultivators and said solemnly, "Royal Highness Lan, if it was in the past, I would welcome you to become my disciple. After all, you can gather the power of the Dao sect and protect our Dao sect from the influence of Confucian cultivators. But now that the Jadestage Mountain has changed, if you become my disciple, you might be implicated. Are you still willing?" "Ha, Taoist Xiao is overthinking." Royal Highness Lan laughed and said, "I have thought about it over these years. I have suffered a lot in order to reach the nascent soul realm. I have also suffered a lot under the pressure of Confucian cultivators. If Taoist Xiao hadn't saved me during the Jadestage conference, I would have died long ago. People who have died once can see things that ordinary cultivators can't compare to. Taoist Xiao's mind is broad and his magic power is boundless. If I can receive Taoist Xiao's guidance, not only can my cultivation improve, I can also hide from Confucian cultivators under Taoist Xiao's protection. Why wouldn't I be happy? This disciple is willing to become Taoist Xiao's disciple." Royal Highness Lan knelt on the ground. The 20 Golden Core disciples also knelt and shouted, "Junior is also willing to become Taoist Xiao's disciple." "Good." Xiaohua nodded. Just as he was about to speak, he heard someone call out from outside the cave, "Wait, oh." Xiaohua was stunned and raised his head to look. He saw Li Xiang rushing into the cave with dozens of his disciples behind him. Li Xiang entered the cave and immediately knelt beside Royal Highness Lan and said anxiously, "Taoist Xiao, I am also willing to enter the Fortune Gate." Chapter 38:12. "We juniors are also willing to become your disciples," Li Xiang's disciples said, and naturally knelt beside the 20 Jindan disciples. Looking at the liveliness in the cave, Xiaohua smiled slightly, stood up and said, "Fellow Taoist Li, get up quickly, what are you singing now?" "Ah, Taoist Xiao." Li Xiang did not get up, but lowered his head and sighed. "Speaking of which, I, Xiong Yi, and this fellow Taoist have all received great kindness from Taoist. Perhaps one of them was saved, but I, along with all my disciples, were saved from the death prison by Taoist. And I have been with Taoist Xiao the longest. Normally speaking, I should have said it long ago. However, Taoist must have known long ago that I did not get along well with the previous imperial tutor of Jiang country, Qin Haoyue. I have lingering fears about this. Especially when Taoist wanted to go to Yaodai Mountain, I did my best to stop him. In reality, I also had selfish motives. I knew that if Taoist went, if he died, if he returned, it would not be the ending I wanted. If Taoist took the imperial tutor's lot, he would definitely fall into the mortal world, and his mind would definitely be affected. I do not want to repeat the same mistake. So after Xiongyi returned, even though fellow Taoist Xiong did not say anything, I already understood that Taoist Xiao most likely already received the imperial tutor's lot, and the development of the matter has already fallen in a direction I do not want to see. So I simply did not care about the matters of Black Wind Ridge, and handed them all to fellow Taoist Xiong. As for the peculiarities that fellow Taoist Xiong found, I did not detect them at all. I am far inferior to fellow Taoist Xiong in this regard. This is also one of the reasons why I had the thought of leaving. Before Taoist returned, I had already made a decision. If there is a chance, I will bid farewell to Taoist. However, Taoist's performance in Jiang country really exceeded my expectations. Not only did Taoist save me again, you also generously gave the imperial tutor's lot to the Changling princess. At this moment, I understand that Taoist is going to the Yaotai conference for that promise, and not just to establish a country. Taoist is not the Taoist I thought. Taoist should go to the Yaotai conference. A cultivator like Taoist who treats promises as gold, is that not what I want to follow? At this point, Li Xiang bowed down again and said, "Therefore, I would like to ask Taoist to allow this disciple to become Taoist's disciple. We are all willing to become your disciples and listen to your teachings." Dozens of Golden Core cultivators shouted in unison. Their voices were rather majestic. Xiaohua smiled and waved his hand. "Good, since everyone has come under this old man's tutelage, then, on behalf of my Fortune Gate disciples, this old man welcomes everyone. Thank you, Tao Master. The cultivators were overjoyed and kowtowed as they entered the fortune gate. Today is another joyous day. Looks like this old man will have to hold a big banquet again. Xiaohua sat down and laughed heartily, then ordered, Black Bear, quickly go and prepare. Yes, I understand. The Black Bear spirit was overjoyed when he saw so many Golden Core Realm cultivators joining the fortune gate. He hurriedly ran out. Xiong, Li Xiang, Prince Lan, stay behind. The other disciples go back and rest first. Xiaohua instructed again, with the bearing of a sect leader. Yes. All the Golden Core Realm and Foundation Establishment Realm disciples answered in unison and walked out one after another. Only Lu Yi, Fu Jiwen, and Wang Yifei stood in front of Xiaohua without moving. Lu Yi, prepare a seat for the 3 senior brothers. Xiaohua instructed. Yes, master. Lu Yi's expression did not change. He glanced at Fu Jiwen and Wang Yifei, then the 3 of them took out 3 chairs from the side and placed them beside the 3 nascent soul realm cultivators. Xiaohua smiled and said, Senior brothers, please sit. Many thanks, junior brothers. Xiong Yi and the others knew that these 3 were the disciples that Xiaohua had chosen. Although their cultivations were still shallow, their future was immeasurable, so they did not dare to neglect them. When the 3 nascent soul realm disciples were seated, Xiaohua smiled and said, You all have seen it. Previously, this old man only wanted to accept a few disciples to train. The so-called founding of a sect was not something that I had thought of, but now, even you 3 nascent soul realm cultivators have come under this old man's tutelage. This lineup has exceeded this old man's expectations. Of course, to tell you the truth, this old man has no problem guiding your cultivation. This old man's strength is far beyond your imagination. Xiong Yi, Li Xiang, and Prince Lan all sucked in a breath of cold air. They looked at each other with astonishment in their eyes. After all, in their eyes, the strength that Xiaohua had shown was already extremely shocking. They had never imagined that Xiaohua's far beyond your imagination would be like Loki. Xiaohua smiled and said, If you all had not come under this old man's tutelage, this old man would not have told you. Yes, this disciple understands. Xiong Yi and the others smiled and nodded. Cultivation techniques, medicinal pills, magic treasures. Wait. You all don't need to think about it. This old man has confidence in all of these. Xiaohua said again. However, this old man does not have much experience in establishing a sect. Now that my fortune gate has more disciples, these are all things that you all need to consider. Yes, in the space, although the green-robed Xiaohua and the scholarly cultivator Xiaohua were establishing a sect, they were close to gods in the space. Moreover, there were more than 10,000 disciples that they could do whatever they wanted. But in the Black Wind Ridge, it was different. Not to mention the 3 nascent soul cultivators, even those golden core disciples, which one of them had not lived for hundreds of years, experienced the ways of the world and experienced all kinds of hardships. If there were no rules for establishing a sect, before the fortune gate was established, wouldn't the people's hearts have already scattered? Master, please rest assured. Xiong Yi smiled and said, Before Master returned, this disciple had already considered this matter. Although this disciple has not reported to Master, nor has this disciple discussed with the 2 senior brothers, this disciple has already formed a constitution. Master, please take a look. Saying this, Xiong Yi took out a jade eye ring and handed it to Xiaohua. Oh, Xiong Yi will enter under this old man's tutelage first as a senior brother. Xiaohua came to his senses and said to the 3 people, Li Xiang will enter last as a junior brother. Yes, this disciple understands. The 3 of them were all nascent soul cultivators, and their cultivations were very similar. In fact, it didn't matter who was the senior brother or junior brother. The 3 of them looked at each other and answered with a smile. Xiaohua took the jade eye ring and glanced at it, then handed it to Prince Lan and said, You 2 also take a look. Prince Lan and Li Xiang looked at the jade eye ring, then at each other. Prince Lan smiled and said, Senior brother Xiong's constitution is very detailed. This disciple has nothing to say. Xiong Yi's constitution contains my Black Wind Ridge's previous framework, and also contains the rules of an ordinary sect. The three of you will be outer disciples, and each of you will teach a group of disciples. This old man will lead some younger disciples to become inner disciples. Xiao Hua nodded and said, also, this old man basically agrees with the rewards and punishments. However, since we are going to expand, there is no harm in abandoning the outer and inner disciples, and each of you will lead a division. Xiao Hua expressed his opinion. In fact, what he said was similar to the Imperial Lightning sect structure, and he didn't have any special ideas. Hearing this, Xiong Yi and the others smiled and said, we also understand what Master is saying. This kind of sect structure is a little scattered for the sect Master's authority, but it suits Master's lazy personality. However, the current Fortune Gate relies on Master's strength, and our Fortune Gate's disciples have not reached that level. According to Master's idea of managing the sect, is not suitable. All right. Xiao Huan naturally knew his own weight, and he waved his hand and said with a smile, these mundane matters will be left to the three of you. This old man will not say anything else. Yes, Master. The three of them said in unison, you can cultivate as much as you want, the higher your strength. The three of them suddenly thought of something and looked at each other. Xiongyi then looked at Lu Yi and the others and said, Master, let junior brother Lu Yi and the others leave for a while. Xiao Huan nodded and let Lu Yi and the others leave. Prince Lan asked in a low voice, Master, don't tell me you've already reached the 5th grade? What do you think? Xiao Hua chuckled and asked in return. Nonsense. Xiongyi said to Prince Lan, Master killed 3 Buddhist sects upper grade 4th grade Essence Force Guardians with a wave of his hand. What do you think Master's strength is? Master, your cultivation seems to be only at mid-nascent soul realm, right? Li Xiong also asked in a low voice. Xiao Hua smiled and waved his hand. 3 jade eyes flew to the three of them and said, I know what you're thinking, take them and cultivate. Thank you, Master. Xiong Yi and the others were overjoyed. They carefully looked at the jade eyes and kept them in their spatial pouches before saying, actually, Master, this disciple wants to remind Master that you must control your cultivation realm. If the Immortal Palace finds out, it will be very difficult. This old man knows. Xiao Huan nodded and frowned. What if this old man is not on the hidden Immortal mainland? Will the Immortal Palace find out? Definitely not in the Western Paradise. Those old bald donkeys of the Thunder Monastery wear the same pants as the Immortal Palace. As long as you break through to the 5th grade in the Western Paradise, the Immortal Palace will immediately know. Li Xiang replied, as for the 1,000 Demons Sacred Realm, the demon race and the Immortal Palace have the same agreement. They cannot block the celestial phenomenon of a breakthrough. Of course, the demon race has always been arrogant and unruly, and there have been many conflicts with the Immortal Palace over the years. Some demon kings and even great sages don't put the Immortal Palace in their eyes. If our Taoist cultivators break through in these places, the Immortal Palace may not know. And even if they know, they won't dare to go down to the lower realm to capture us. However, this is on the premise that the fellow Taoist who breaks through will not be eaten by the Demon King. This old man understands. Xiao Hua nodded. He already knew Shui Mingzi's plan. Master, this disciple also has something to discuss with everyone. Prince Lan was very happy that he obtained the jade eyes. Now that he saw Xiao Hua following his advice without any arbitrariness, he also said, I hope Master won't take offense. Xiao Hua smiled and said, just say it. This disciple has not been in the Black Wind Ridge for long, so I might not know the origin of the Black Wind Ridge. Prince Lan said, but in this disciple's opinion, the Black Wind Ridge is not suitable to be the location of our Fortune Gate. Chapter 38:13. Oh, what do you mean? Xiao Hua frowned slightly, but he soon regained his composure and asked with interest. Master, disciple has 3 reasons. His heart tightened as he carefully said, first, the Black Wind Ridge is not big enough for a sect to develop. Second, the Black Wind Ridge is located at the border of 3 countries. No matter how it develops, Jiang country, Jiasa country, and Copper Pillar country will pay attention. These 3 countries have Tao sects, Confucian cultivators, and Buddhism behind them. Even if our fortune gate unifies the 3 countries, the Confucian cultivators will be alerted. Since Master wants to do something that no one has done before, this idea of establishing a country should be abandoned. Third, the Black Wind Ridge's origin energy is not particularly abundant, and it is only because of the Origin Stone Mine underground. Now that the Origin Stone Mine is known by others, it will be a big problem in the future. Oh, since you mentioned it, Disciple has another drawback. Black Wind Ridge has already fallen into the Confucian cultivator's eyes. If Master wants to establish a sect here, it is tantamount to walking into a trap. Senior brother Lan is right. Li Xiang knew Xiaohua's temperament. He looked at Xiaohua and smiled. Master's cultivation is profound, but he is indeed lacking in this aspect. In these years, Disciple has considered that the Black Wind Ridge's reputation is not good, and our Fortune Gate's reputation will also be bad if we establish a sect here. Who says this old man has not thought about it? Xiaohua of course would not admit it. A crafty rabbit has 3 burrows. How could this old man not consider this matter? It's just that this old man has not had time to discuss it with you. What does Master think we should do next? Xiong Yi asked with a smile. You can decide on this matter. Xiaohua casually waved his hand. All right, Disciple will speak first. Seeing that Xiaohua was not angry, Lan Huan relaxed and said, when Disciple was traveling in Jing province, Disciple saw a mountain range that was vast and rich in origin energy. If Master's formation can be placed in that mountain range, it will not attract the attention of Confucian cultivators. Disciple also knows that there is a blessed land in Yu province that is very suitable for establishing a sect. Li Xiang added, furthermore, I feel that this place doesn't have to be too far away from Black Wind Ridge. Let's take a closer look first. Xiaohua nodded and said, in fact, to our Fortune Gate, this protective grand formation is the most important. Only a place where we can set up the formation can establish a sect. All right, Disciple has some understanding of arrays. Prince Lan volunteered. Disciple will first go to the mountain range that junior brother Li mentioned. Good, you take Fujiwen with you. Xiaohua stood up and said, this old man will wait for your news. In addition, this old man has some matters to attend to today. Xiong Yi, come over tomorrow morning. This old man wants to see your cultivation progress. Li Xiang is temporarily in charge of the affairs of Black Wind Ridge. Thank you, Master. Xiong Yi was overjoyed. Li Xiang and Lan also stood up to accept the order. Xiaohua was naturally concerned about Taoist Jingting and Xian. Although the Fortune Gate currently had 3 nascent soul cultivators, Xiaohua's Dantian had more than 150 nascent souls. If Xian and Master Taoist Jingting succeeded in cultivating their scattered souls, then Xiaohua could absolutely control more than 150 scattered souls. What kind of strength was this? Xiaohua couldn't afford to be careless. When Xiaohua arrived at the quiet room, Taoist Jingting had already woken up and was whispering with Xian. Their discussion was lively. When they saw someone enter, both of them were startled and vigilance flashed through their eyes. When they saw Xiaohua, they were immediately overjoyed. They bowed and said, Master, good. Xiaohua sat cross-legged on the praying mat and asked, have you finished your discussion? Yes, Master. Xian nodded. Disciple and junior brother Jingting have discussed it. There is no difference between the 2 of us. Now we can consume the mortal essence. Good. Xiaohua waved his hand and took out a mortal essence that was several 100,000 years old. Who are you waiting for? Master. Xian and Taoist Jingting looked at the mortal essence and seemed to be afraid. They hurriedly dodged and cried out, this mortal essence is too old. The heaven and earth essence contained within is not something we can absorb. There is such a saying? Xiaohua hurriedly put away the mortal essence. Only then did the 2's little faces return to normal. Yes, Master. Xian Songzi said with a bitter smile. Mo Yuntong didn't explain, but disciple can sense the heaven and earth essence within the mortal essence that is so dense that it can swallow disciple. Oh, so that's how it is. Xiao Hua somewhat understood. The nascent soul was originally a spiritual body condensed from the heaven and earth essence. After absorbing the mortal essence, one could cultivate a scattered nascent soul. However, if there was too much heaven and earth essence in the mortal essence, it would similarly swallow the nascent soul. Seems like cultivating a scattered nascent soul is far from as simple as Mo Yuntong said. Mo Yuntong only pointed out a cultivation path. As for the specific details, you still have to figure it out yourself. Taoist Jingting replied with lingering fear. Xiao Hua took out several mortal essences that were several tens of thousands of years old, 100,000 years old, and a few 100,000 years old. He said, Xian Songzi, go first. You have more time to comprehend, so you have a higher chance of success. Good. Xian Songzi chose a mortal essence that was about 120,000 years old and said, Master, guard disciple at the side. If there is anything inappropriate, Master can make the decision. Master understands. Xiao Hua nodded and put away the rest of the mortal essences. He rubbed his hands together and launched a series of mysterious seals. As the seals were launched, strands of crystal threads as thin as hair condensed in midair and slowly fell into the mortal essence. The mortal essence melted like ice and snow, turning into a ball of yellow liquid. Within the liquid, balls of golden threads rolled up and down. Moreover, as the whole ball of liquid violently swelled, after the crystal threads entered the liquid, layers of tiny ant-like runes seeped out from the golden threads. These runes emitted a slight rumbling sound, like thunder and also like a low chant. When the runes fell into the yellow liquid, the liquid emitted strange fluctuations from time to time, and the whole liquid actually slowly shrank. After the liquid shrank, it turned into a human figure. Although the appearance was unclear, a fist-sized whirlpool appeared on the top of the door. Ghostly howls resounded in the air. Xiao Hua growled, Xian Songzi, if you're not forming your body now, when are you going to wait? Yes, master. Xian Songzi was already eager to give it a try. When he heard Xiao Hua's order, he hurriedly rushed towards the mortal essence. Woo! Xian Songzi's nascent soul was only a few feet away from the mortal essence when a huge suction force was produced from the vortex, pulling Xian Songzi into the mortal essence. Ah! Xian Songzi's nascent soul fell into the mortal essence and immediately let out a heart-wrenching howl. Xiao Hua narrowed his eyes and remained unmoved. He already understood that this was the essence of the mortal essence attacking Xian Songzi's nascent soul. This kind of pain was tantamount to tearing apart and rebuilding every inch of Xian Songzi's body. Xiao Hua had also experienced this kind of pain in the past. When the heavens are about to bestow a great responsibility upon a man, it must first torment his will, toil his muscles and bones, starve his skin, empty his body, and disturb his actions. Xiao Hua's mouth faintly recited a Confucian text, and the hand seals in his hand continuously struck out. With the passage of time, 3 faint invisible brilliants slowly emerged from the top of his head. This scattered nascent soul cultivation method was truly heaven-defying. Even someone as strong as Xiao Hua's cultivation base was now beginning to produce a vision. Looking at the mortal essence again, the human figure gradually revealed Xian Songzi's face. However, his face was really ugly. His grimacing appearance was completely deformed. Moreover, the mortal essence's 4 limbs and even its entire body were trembling violently. It seemed that the fusion was very difficult. Go! In the end, Xiao Hua took a deep breath and the magic power in his body surged. The 3 lights above his head suddenly flashed and the flower shape instantly disappeared. As Xiao Hua pushed with his hands, the last hand's seal slowly fell into the mortal essence. Boom! There was an indescribable vibration and a strange hiss. The mortal essence's body once again appeared with strange and obscure runes. As the runes tumbled, waves of fluctuations rushed out. Amidst the fluctuations, hundreds of thumb-sized whirlpools appeared in the quiet room at the same time. Waves of unknown air swarmed out and fell into the mortal essence that was already very similar to Xian Songzi's nascent soul. Phew! Xiaohua let out a sigh of relief. His gaze fell on the mortal essence. The runes had already begun to solidify and a Xian Songzi similar to an ordinary person was gradually forming. Finally, it went smoothly. Xiaohua faintly smiled, but a moment later, his smile disappeared again. He muttered, "It seems, it's still missing something." "Exactly, it's this height." Xiaohua looked at Taoist Master Jingting, who was hiding in the corner of the quiet room in the distance. He was somewhat envious and somewhat worried. Suddenly he realized, this height is very similar to a 4- or 5-year-old child. Thinking of this, Xiaohua was just about to close his eyes and carefully ponder over the strangeness inside, but suddenly, a tremor suddenly emerged from the bottom of his heart. This is? Without waiting for Xiaohua to think more, a peerless pressure descended from the sky and enveloped the entire quiet room. An explosive aura instantly filled the entire quiet room. Lightning tribulation? This aura was so familiar that Xiaohua almost didn't need to think before he jumped up from the ground. Cultivating a nascent soul requires 3 gold lightning tribulations? Just as this thought appeared, Xiaohua unhesitatingly rolled up his sleeves and brought Xian Songzi, who had already finished forming his body, and Taoist Master Jingting, who was beside him, who was extremely frightened. His figure flashed and he turned into lightning and rushed out of the quiet room. When he arrived outside the cave, he saw that the sky was already densely covered with dark clouds at an extremely fast speed. Streaks of dragon-like lightning had already begun to brew behind these dark clouds. Damn it, I understand now. This is a loose immortal's helpless action after failing the lightning tribulation. Cultivating a nascent soul also requires a lightning tribulation. This is probably the initial tribulation of a nascent soul. In the future, after a period of time, every realm will have a lightning tribulation. How can my heavenly star's formation withstand 3 gold lightning tribulations? Once this lightning tribulation falls, not to mention the formation turning into ashes, even more than half of the people and demons in the Black Wind Mountain range will die. Xiaohua was somewhat panicked. Why didn't Mo Yuntong even mention this? Chapter 38:14. Xiaohua flew out of the immortal cave. Xiong Yi and the others were naturally alarmed by the lightning tribulation's celestial phenomenon and had already flown out to investigate. While everyone and the demons were in a state of panic, Xiaohua separated from the grand array and activated the lightning escape technique. Sure enough, once Xiaohua left, the suffocating pressure was swept away. Although the sky was still filled with lightning and thunder, the rolling dark clouds chased after Xiaohua. See! Xiong Yi, Lan Wang, and Li Xiang stood in the air, watching the lightning tribulation leave. They were even more shocked. After a while, the 3 of them looked at each other and sucked in a breath of cold air. Xiong Yi asked in a low voice, 2 junior brothers, what realm did Master break through? Why is there still lightning tribulation? If senior brother doesn't understand, then of course we don't understand either. Lan Wang was also confused. Maybe it's some secret technique Master cultivates? Seeing that the demons of Black Wind Ridge were a little restless, Xiong Yi frowned and sent a message to Qin Xiaoyao, telling him to find He Xiong and the other demons. The 3 of them waited in the air for Xiaohua to return. After waiting for 3 whole days, Xiaohua returned with a slightly tired expression. The 3 of them hurriedly went up to greet him. Xiaohua waved his hand and said, Master is fine. You all go do your own things. Li Xiang, hurry up and find that paradise. With such a big commotion, it's impossible not to attract the attention of the Immortal Palace. Yes, disciple understands. Li Xiang hurriedly bowed and said, Disciple has already sent a group of disciples to bring Fujiwen there. Disciple will go with senior brother Lan Wang. Xiaohua nodded and landed in front of the cave. He didn't see Yuanya standing there, looking at him with concern. Yuanya, come in. Xiaohua said with a wave of his hand. Yes, master. The worry and confusion on Yuanya's face had already disappeared. Hearing Xiaohua's greeting, Yuanya hurriedly replied respectfully and followed Xiaohua into the cave. Xiaohua sat down on the brocade chair and asked, Yuanya, do you understand now? Disciple doesn't understand. Yuanya was honest and said with regret, the ways of the world, mutual deception, is much more cruel than the beast fights in Mystic Jade Dark Forest. Disciple originally thought that Master was the closest person to Disciple, but Disciple never thought that Master would want Disciple's life, and the reason for killing Disciple was because he wanted to marry Diaowu. As for Diaowu, this Disciple really does not understand why the throne of Jiang country is so important, to actually make her betray so many people. Master, this Disciple really doesn't dare to believe that this Diaowu is the Diaowu that this Disciple raised with dear milk when she was young. What made her become like this? There was no distinction between the masters that Yuanya spoke of. Others might not understand, but Xiaohua was able to distinguish clearly from Yuanya's sorrowful tone. After all, the two people that Yuanya considered to be the closest in his life betrayed him at the same time, and even wanted to put him to death. How could he, who did not understand the ways of the world, understand? Xiaohua smiled and said, since you can't figure it out, then don't think about it. In the future, you don't have to think about such complicated and profound questions when you stay under my tutelage. Yes, Master. Yuanya's tone was still somewhat gloomy, but compared to his previous heart that was on the verge of death, there was a faint trace of sunshine. Everyone's personality was different, and there was no need to ask everyone to be proficient in the ways of the world. Everyone should do what they were good at, and only then would they be able to find the most accurate position and find the happiness in each person's life. Oh, that's right, Yuanya. When did you secretly learn this old man's fist techniques? I remember that you couldn't use them at the Jianghu monastery. Xiaohua thought for a moment, then asked with a smile. When it came to cultivation, Yuanya's eyes lit up and he said with a smile, that day when Master was practicing at the Jianghu mountain range, this disciple secretly learned them from the side, and indeed did not learn them. Those moves were especially awkward, and this disciple could not remember them at all. However, after this disciple left the longevity town with Master, this disciple pondered over them on the side, and then suddenly was able to use them. Moreover, every once in a while, this disciple would feel a very strange flow around this disciple's body. This disciple did not know what this was, but this disciple did not dare to ask Master. However, after a long time, this disciple felt that his strength had increased a lot. The magic hammer that Master gave me was a bit heavy at that time, but now this disciple can hold it very easily. Xiaohua smiled. He could not remember the origin of this Big Dipper magical fist, but it was very clear that this Big Dipper magical fist was one of the most important parts of his cultivation. For Yuanya to be able to secretly learn this Big Dipper magical fist, he was indeed a disciple that the heavens had arranged for him. Very good. Xiaohua nodded and handed a jade eye scroll to Yuanya, saying, this is a simple description of the Big Dipper magical fist, and the real cultivation method still requires Master's personal guidance. You should cultivate this fist technique first. When you can feel the flow every time you practice, it should be a small success. You should also cultivate the cultivation method that Lu Yi taught you first, and if there is anything you do not understand, come and ask Master. In addition, this Jade Eye Scroll contains a kind of elementary body refining technique. When you have divine sense, you can explore it yourself. Xiaohua's heavenly body refining technique came from the Sunset Island, and when he obtained it, he had already promised not to spread it out. However, with Xiaohua's current cultivation, it was not too difficult to create a similar elementary cultivation method. This body refining technique was given by the green-robed Xiaohua to the tens of thousands of children in the space to use. Many thanks, Master. With a goal to cultivate, Yuanya seemed to have come back to life, and he reached out to receive it and very happily replied. Go, if there is something you do not understand, go and ask Lu Yi and Qin Xiaoyao. Now that you are all fellow disciples, there is no need to be afraid of anything. Xiaohua waved his hand to let Yuanya leave. Looking at Yuanya's straight waist, which was different from when he came in, Xiaohua's mouth hung a smile. Even a bright pearl had to be sharpened, and after this encounter, Yuanya might be able to understand more. Moreover, Yuan Ye's mind was pure, and he could practice the Big Dipper divine fist that others could not practice. Xiao Hua was really curious about what Yuan Ye's achievements would be in the future. After Yuan Ye left, Xiao Hua also stood up and entered the quiet room. After activating the restriction of the quiet room, he sat cross-legged on the futon and took out the Kunlun mirror. He thought to himself, I didn't expect that the lightning tribulation that Xian Songzi and perfected Jingting faced to cultivate the scattered nascent soul was not the triple gold lightning tribulation, but only one. However, this lightning tribulation was extremely powerful. With their early-stage nascent soul cultivation, it was impossible for them to withstand it. If it wasn't for me blocking most of it for them, their small bodies would have been turned into ashes by the lightning tribulation. However, in this way, although they can successfully cultivate the scattered nascent soul, the next lightning tribulation will definitely be even more ferocious than this one. It seems that unless I cultivate to the late-stage nascent soul stage, it's better not to place my hopes on the scattered nascent soul cultivation method. Thinking of this, Xiao Hua activated his magic power, and in the light pillar of the Kunlun mirror, Xian Songzi and perfected Jingting came out of the Kunlun ruins. Thank you, Master. At this moment, Xian Songzi and perfected Jingting looked like they were only half of their previous height, but they were much better than nascent soul cultivators. The two of them looked around, and joy appeared on their pale faces as they bowed and said, Get up. Xiao Hua flicked his sleeve. Although I blocked the lightning tribulation for you, it's still disadvantageous to your cultivation. I'm sure you know the karma inside. You have to speed up your cultivation in the future. Don't have any problems when the next lightning tribulation comes. Yes, I understand. Perfected Jingting replied with lingering fear. The next lightning tribulation will be the scattered nascent soul lightning tribulation. I hope that Master can bestow me with spiritual wisdom so that I can comprehend the cultivation method with senior brother Xian Songzi. Alright. Xiao Hua thought for a moment. He knew that consuming Renjing would reconstruct the nascent soul body, so there would be a lightning tribulation. Spiritual wisdom was not necessary for cultivating the scattered nascent soul, so there would not be any special lightning tribulation. He raised his hand and took out a spiritual wisdom that was not too old. He asked, Who are you waiting for to consume it first? I'll go first. Perfected Jingting took a step forward and said, Just now, senior brother Xian Songzi tried it first. Now it's my turn. All right. Xiao Hua raised his hand and delivered the spiritual wisdom to perfected Jingting. Perfected Jingting respectfully received it. He opened his mouth and the swallow-like spiritual grass fell into his body. Buzz. Just as the spiritual wisdom entered, perfected Jingting's body immediately flashed with a strange green brilliance. A sound even stranger than the brilliance came from his abdomen. Green seal script. Xiao Hua, who was closely watching perfected Jingting, was startled. He hastily released his soul sense. Sure enough, within his soul sense, perfected Jingting's nascent soul body reflected a green light. Several fingernail-sized green seal script spiraled and rushed towards perfected Jingting's head. Boom! Perfected Jingting only felt an earth-shattering rumble in his mind. Layers of green were like blooming flowers. Little swallows flew out one after another from these flowers. As these swallows flew out, he seemed to have opened his spiritual cavities. His mind became refreshed, far from the muddle-headed feeling he had before. Within Xiao Hua's soul sense, he also saw several green seal scripts suddenly expand and turn into a fist-sized flower. As the flower bloomed, a strange fluctuation tore apart Xiao Hua's soul strands. Immediately, all the green light disappeared and perfected Jingting returned to his original appearance. Junior brother. Seeing perfected Jingting open his eyes, Xian Songzi's eyes flashed with joy. Although he knew the spiritual wisdom would definitely be effective, he still couldn't help but ask in a low voice. Excellent. Perfected Jingting didn't know how to express his feelings. This feeling of opening all the spiritual cavities was absolutely nothing to the previous him. He never felt there was anything to treasure. After all, without these spiritual cavities, he couldn't have stepped into the ranks of cultivators, let alone reach nascent soul. But now that he had lost his spiritual cavities, He was actually inferior to ordinary people. Now that he had exchanged them with heavenly treasures, this feeling of regaining what he had lost made him understand that even if it was the most common magical ability, as long as he had it, it was also a kind of happiness. He could only use these two words to describe his feelings. Chapter 38:15. Xiansongzi Yu 2. Xiaohua waved his hand again and took out another spiritual wisdom amplification and sent it to Xiansongzi. When Xiansongzi used the spiritual wisdom amplification, his eyes also flashed with a strange emotion. Only after using it did he truly know the importance of the spiritual wisdom amplification. Xiansongzi glanced at perfected Jingting and then looked at Xiaohua deeply. Then, the two of them bowed at the same time. Master, disciple is truly grateful for Master's kindness of rebirth. There's no need to say anything more. Quickly go and cultivate. You're my disciples. What I can do for you, I'll do according to your requests. Xiaohua smiled and sent the two nascent souls into the Kunlun ruins. After putting away the Kunlun mirror, Xiaohua sat cross-legged on the futon and took out a mother-child spirit fruit. As he looked at it carefully, he thought to himself, Xiansongzi and perfected Jingting are nascent souls with primordial spirits. It's natural for them to use the mother-child spirit fruit and spiritual wisdom amplification. After all, they know the degree. However, the 100 or so nascent souls in my lower dantian are already damaged. I'm afraid it's difficult for them to distinguish the degree of use. It'll be difficult for me to cast the spell. Moreover, this spiritual wisdom amplification actually contains green seal text. Such a rare treasure can be used directly, but if it's tempered by my Dao Sex alchemy method, won't it have a better effect? There's a pill called Spirit Awakening Fluid in Senior Tsang Langzi's pill formula. It seems to be related to spirit awakening. However, the main ingredient is not spiritual wisdom amplification. When Green wrote Xiaohua in the space is free, I'll let him try refining some. Perhaps this spirit awakening fluid will have a better effect on these nascent souls with incomplete primordial spirits? Of course, these nascent souls are constantly tempered by the 5 Qi righteous thunder in their lower dantian. Moreover, they have obtained the essence of the ancient fierce soul. I believe their bodies are tougher than the two of them. It won't be difficult for them to pass the thunder tribulation. If it were in the past, I wouldn't be so anxious. I would definitely wait and see the results of Xiansongzi and the others' cultivation. But now, the matter of Yaotai Mountain has attracted the attention of the Immortal Palace. Perhaps they won't think of me now, but there's no such thing as a secret. Who knows when the Immortal Palace will send someone here? Even, not to mention the Immortal Palace, even the Confucian cultivators of Yuzhou might not be able to tolerate me. Therefore, this Xiao cannot wait any longer. I can only make use of my time. At this point, Xiaohua was indeed staking everything on a single throw. Also, the things in this world are truly mysterious. Developing intelligence seems to be the second time the Xiao has seen a heaven-earth spiritual object that contains green seal text. Ordinary spirit fruits that contained heaven-earth yuan qi were already rare. But this underworld fruit that could develop spiritual intelligence and grow in the water of the Yellow Springs were even more incredible. Of course, the effects of this miraculous item were miraculous as well. Not to mention the fact that it was able to penetrate the spiritual cavities of nascent souls. Just the underworld fruit was far more beneficial to soul cultivators than the daybreak moon. Previously, Xiao Mao's cultivation speed was already pretty good. However, after consuming the underworld fruit, the speed of cultivation became even more terrifying. In just a few years, I have already reached the Heaven's Heart realm. Although I have just broken through to the Heaven's Heart realm, Xiao Mao can feel that my cultivation speed will definitely not slow down in the future. Could it be that this soul cultivator, or rather, the millions of shamans in Meng Mountains were really the descendants of the great god Hoodoo? Hoodoo great god really transformed into the 9 underworlds? If that's the case, how do you explain the formation of the inside of Xiao Mao's space? Shue's soul and Master's soul. Forget it, this world is too miraculous. It's not something that Xiao Mao can speculate with his current strength. Let's not think about it for now. Just as Xiao Hua thought of this, an indescribable surge suddenly appeared in his meridians. Then, Dragon Vein Xiao Hua let out a furious roar and rushed out of Xiao Hua's body, turning into a huge dragon and flying several dozen feet away. It flew straight to the restrictive spell of the quiet room, and only then did it trigger the restrictive spell. The dragon's body was forcefully stopped, and the huge dragon filled up the entire quiet room. "What's going on?" Xiao Hua asked curiously. Dragon Vein Xiao Hua turned into a dragon elephant and coiled around the quiet room. While swimming, he answered, "I sensed a kind of dragon aura soaring into the sky." Although this dragon aura was very weak and not much, after the dragon aura soared into the sky, the noble aura that descended was extremely vast and very tempting. "I couldn't help but fly out, oh?" Xiao Hua raised his eyebrows and looked at the direction Dragon Vein Xiao Hua was facing. He asked curiously, "What's going on? What's going on over there?" Dragon Vein Xiao Hua coiled around the quiet room for an hour before entering Xiao Hua's physical body. Xiao Hua walked out of the quiet room and released his Buddhist consciousness. When he saw what was happening over there, he couldn't help but sneer. However, the moment he withdrew his Buddhist consciousness, his expression suddenly changed. He released his Buddhist consciousness again and looked at it for a moment before withdrawing it thoughtfully. A short while later, Xiong entered the dwelling and said with a bow, "Master, Jianghu country has been revived." "And Master knows?" Xiao Hua nodded and said, "This Changling princess is amazing as expected. Not only did she kill 2 birds with 1 stone, she killed 3 birds with 1 stone. In just a few days, she actually found a suitable Jindan cultivator to establish a country. It seems, she knows that this old man will not make things difficult for her. Everyone knows that Master is benevolent. As long as you do not do anything outrageous, even if Master is angry, there is no need to be afraid." Xiongyi smiled and then winked as he lowered his voice and asked, "Master, that lightning tribulation, what was it?" "Lightning tribulation is lightning tribulation. What could it be?" Xiao Hua waved his sleeve in annoyance and said, "This lightning tribulation is not this old man's, don't think so much." Xiongyi blinked. Seeing Xiao Hua stand, he hurriedly stood and sent Xiao Hua into the quiet room. However, before Xiao Hua entered the quiet room, he stopped and turned around. "Also, Master is going into closed-door cultivation for a period of time. If there are any earth-shaking movements in the future, all of you don't have to be too surprised." "All right." Xiongyi hurriedly agreed. "Also, urge Black Bear to have all the Yaos, and the outer sect disciples go down the veins. Empty the veins as soon as possible." Xiao Hua thought of something again and instructed, "When Master makes a move, there won't be any meat left for you." He understood. "Master, this disciple will roll up his sleeves and go to work." Xiongyi giggled and left. After Xiongyi left, Xiao Hua did not enter the quiet room. Instead, his figure flashed and disappeared into the void. When Xiao Hua reappeared, he was already outside the Black Wind Ridge. This place was about 40 li away from the Black Wind Ridge. Xiao Hua's figure appeared in midair. He frowned as he looked down at the mountain rocks below. He seemed to be thinking about something. However, after a short while, Xiao Hua stretched out his hand. A huge palm silhouette of several tens of zhang in size fell from the sky and plunged into a pile of rocks. When the big hand turned over, that big hand was holding a scholarly cultivator in a yellow robe. This scholarly cultivator's robe was very strange. It was somewhat similar to the outer robe of a secular person, but there were some flashing inscriptions on the robe. There were also mountains and rivers printed on the chest and back of the robe. It looked similar to the official robe worn by the secular government officials. "This cultivator is a bit strange?" Xiao Hua looked at the cultivator imprisoned by him and thought to himself, "Not only is his appearance different, but his cultivation is also strange. It seems that he is only proficient in the earth escape technique and concealment technique. He should be very proficient in the earth essence technique. But he is also very weak in other aspects. Under the attack of this Zhao's magic power, he didn't notice at all. There seems to be some kind of aura on this robe." Thinking of this, Xiao Hua's expression suddenly changed. He whispered, Where is fellow immortal Confucian cultivator? Four-colored true qi gushed out from Xiaohua's chest. That Confucian cultivator Xiaohua landed in the air. When he saw everything in front of him clearly, the Confucian cultivator Xiaohua's expression was also grave. He nodded and said, "Fellow Taoist's worries are correct. This Confucian cultivator's robe has the same aura as the imperial star thrust and the imperial shield. This scholarly cultivator must be the eyes and ears of the immortal palace." "Thank you, fellow immortal." Xiaohua nodded slightly and sent Xiaohua back. Then, he thought for a moment and slowly extended his finger. He was extremely careful as if he was afraid of breaking the cultivator's forehead. Then, he quickly withdrew his finger. "Earth Lord." Xiaohua's face showed an astonished expression. The Immortal Palace really has Earth Lords all over the hidden Immortal continent? Granny, no wonder the Immortal Palace can control the entire hidden Immortal continent's information. Oh, that's not it. Not every place on the hidden Immortal continent has Immortal Palace's eyes and ears. Although in name, the Earth Lord supervises the entire hidden Immortal continent's information, these Earth Lords can't always pay attention to all the movements. Only the places that the Immortal Palace pays attention to have Earth Lords truly investigate. It turns out that the Black Wind Ridge doesn't enter the Immortal Palace's eyes at all. It seems that because of this Xiao, it attracted Earth Lord. But this is troublesome. Xiaohua shook his head slightly. If my Fortune Gate's disciples leave the Black Wind Ridge, won't all traces be seen by Earth Lord? Then, won't the newly found cave be exposed to the Immortal Palace's surveillance? Hee. Xiaohua pondered for a moment and a smile appeared on his face. Several extremely small soul strands were released from between his eyebrows and landed on the Earth Lord's forehead. After a while, Xiaohua put the Earth Lord back into the ground and flew away with a smile on his face. After dealing with the Earth Lord's surveillance, Xiaohua formed an incantation and used the Earth Escape technique to escape towards the Black Wind Ridge. On the first day he returned to the Black Wind Ridge, he had tried to sense the metal and wood essence blood that had seeped into his body. Unfortunately, no matter how many times he tried, it was to no avail. Now that he had dealt with everything, he began to busy himself with the most important matter in his heart. At this time, Xiaohua's Earth Escape technique had already reached a high level. Not to mention that he could move extremely nimbly underground, even in places without Earth attribute origin energy, he could rely on his own Earth attribute energy to move. Therefore, this time it was very easy for him to reach the location of the black fog. Chapter 38:16. However, the black fog underground was still like a viscous liquid. Clusters of tiny vortexes were endlessly produced from the inside, constantly spreading towards the outside. However, even at this place, Xiaohua was still unable to sense the blood essence in the water and fire magnetic field. Xiaohua's heart had already turned cold by more than half. Damn it, looks like this Xiao's method isn't working. Xiaohua breathed out spiritual fire and drilled through the fog while secretly thinking, I still have to... Success! That is to say, when Xiaohua's figure had just rushed through the black fog that was several tens of feet deep, a familiar feeling suddenly emerged from the bottom of his heart. It was just like when he used the blood refining method to refine the demonic tool in the past. The entire magnificent water and fire magnetic field space had yet to appear, but the situation inside the space had already fallen into his heart. The blood refining method of the demonic world is indeed powerful. It can really shock the heavens and earth and make ghosts and gods weep. Xiaohua laughed loudly, his figure landing inside the magnetic field space. At this time, Xiaohua already didn't need to open his transcendence vision. What the naked eye could see was a pitch-black mass, but the entire water and fire magnetic field was like a part of Xiaohua's body, incomparably familiar with it. Even those tens of thousands of magnetic fields were like rainbows in Xiaohua's heart. What was special was that at the extreme point of the fire magnetic field, a vermilion bird poked its head out from inside, somewhat curiously looking at Xiaohua. Without any hesitation, it turned into a rainbow and landed below Xiaohua's body, obediently lying beside him, appearing very attached. At the same time, at the extreme point of the water magnetic field, the other black tortoise also didn't show any signs of weakness. It naively flew out, turned into a square foot, and landed on Xiaohua's right arm, similarly obedient. Good. Xiaohua was happy in his heart, using his hand to caress the black tortoise and vermilion bird. Unfortunately, where his hand landed, he simply couldn't touch the two little things. Forget it. Xiaohua was a little embarrassed. He shrugged and said, "Wait for this old man to collect all of you. I reckon that once we enter the space, this old man will be able to touch you." After speaking, Xiaohua released his consciousness and covered the fire and water origin magnetic field. When his consciousness came into contact with the fire and water origin magnetic field, Xiaohua was instantly dumbfounded. He couldn't help but complain bitterly, "Oh my God, this fire and water origin magnetic field is 3,650 mu in size. If it was an ordinary mountain with this Xiao's current divine sense, even if it takes a lot of effort, this Xiao would still be able to store it in the space. But this is a water and fire magnetic field. Its weight is many times that of an ordinary mountain peak. With this Xiao's current cultivation, I'm afraid I won't be able to store it in my space. Rise." At this moment, Xiaohua's mind was mixed with his divine sense and could already wrap up the entire water and fire magnetic field. While his mind was affected, Xiaohua secretly shouted in his heart, as if to encourage himself. Rumble. The entire magnetic field space shook several times, scaring the tiny black tortoise and vermilion bird into fleeing. The water and fire magnetic fields had only moved a few inches, and there was still a large gap between them and the space. Forget it. Today this old man will exhaust you to the end. After knowing the gap, Xiaohua wasn't discouraged. He simply sat cross-legged in the magnetic field space and released his consciousness, divine sense, and Buddhist sense. Just like when he was in the rockfall matrix of Yaodai Mountain, he began to temper his divine sense according to the secret technique. Of course, in addition to tempering his divine sense, Xiaohua also practiced other divine abilities. Every few days, he would even fly out of the magnetic field space and summon a nascent soul. He would feed the nascent soul with human essence and use spiritual wisdom amplification. However, in this way, the Black Wind Ridge would suffer. Every once in a while, the entire Black Wind Ridge would shake a few times. Moreover, from time to time, the might of a lightning tribulation would suddenly appear. However, everyone and the demons of the Black Wind Ridge had also received Xiong Yi's order. They knew that their master was cultivating, so they didn't ask too much. In fact, they didn't have time to ask too much because the Black Wind Ridge's underground or vein was really enormous. They mined day and night and simply didn't have time to ask too much. Time passed very quickly. In the blink of an eye, more than 3 years had passed. On this day, the sky was clear and boundless. Outside the Black Wind Ridge, some of the Golden Eagle's subordinates were patrolling. Suddenly, the entire Black Wind Ridge shook violently. This shaking was far more weak than the previous week shaking. Several of the vicious birds were shocked. The leading vicious bird let out a few loud cries and rushed into the great array. The other vicious birds spread their wings again, wanting to find the source of the abnormality. After all, in the past 3 years, although there were still some Confucian cultivators who came back to the Black Wind Ridge to provoke them, they were defeated by Xiong Yi, Li Xiang, and Prince Lan every time. There had never been such a big movement. However, before the vicious bird landed on the peak of the Black Wind Ridge, the shaking suddenly stopped. A powerful suction force was generated from the capital star array. Tens of thousands of hurricanes rushed in from all directions and madly rushed into the great array. With these hurricanes, the great array unexpectedly changed. Not only did it expand in all directions, but the power of the great array also suddenly increased. The vicious bird's body instantly stopped in midair. Then, as if a big hand had grabbed it, it was thrown high into the sky. Gee! The vicious bird was shocked. It flapped its wings in midair, but it still couldn't stop its body. It didn't stop until its body was thousands of feet high in the sky. Ha! As soon as the vicious bird stopped, Xiaohua's laughter came from the cave. Then, a powerful divine sense that the vicious bird had never seen before suddenly grabbed it and pulled it down from the sky. When it fell outside the great array like a meteor, the divine sense suddenly disappeared. "Thank you, Master. Thank you, Master." How could the vicious bird not know that this was Xiaohua's divine sense? It shouted loudly and flew into the distance to patrol. After the water and fire magnets were absorbed into the space, the capital star array's power actually increased by 40% without the interference of the water and fire magnets. If I used the water and fire magnets to set up a great array, wouldn't all the methods to break the array be useless? Xiaohua's divine sense swept and immediately understood the reason for the great array's change. "Master, you've come out of seclusion?" A moment later, Xiong Yi, Prince Lan, and Li Xiang flew out from the primordial stone vein and came to meet him. "Yes, it's over." Xiaohua smiled. Xiong Yi was a little strange and whispered, "Master, you've only been in seclusion for 3 years, right?" "Just 3 years?" Xiong Yi didn't say anything else. Yes, ordinary nascent soul cultivators would enter seclusion for decades or even centuries. How could they come out in 3 years? You think I don't want to?" Xiaohua snorted, "But I'm a little uneasy, and I just finished a big thing, so I came out to take a look." "Master isn't in seclusion," Li Xiang said with a smile. "Disciple occasionally sees Master going in and out of the great array." "Indeed." Xiaohua nodded. "Master is just making some preparations to prevent the Confucian cultivators from attacking my Black Wind Ridge. Right? Have you heard of the Immortal Palace's eyes and ears?" "Earth? Li Xiang was stunned and shook his head. "Isn't the Earth Geyser a character in legends and stories?" "Not necessarily." Prince Lan immediately understood and smiled. "There's no smoke without fire. Maybe the characters in the stories are copies of reality. Could it be that Master saw the Immortal Palace's land?" Xiong Yi's eyes turned and asked. Xiaohua nodded. "Master has already seen it. Master has also taken care of this matter, so you don't have to worry. However, who knows how much land there is in the entire hidden immortal continent. You all have to be careful and don't give yourself away." "Master is worried." Royal Highness Lan seemed to have thought of something and hurriedly reported. "Disciple received some information. After the Jade Pavilion meeting on the hidden immortal continent, including the Jianghu country next to it, there were a total of 10 Taoist countries that received the imperial tutor's signature to establish their own countries. And in the past year, there were actually 4 countries that were annihilated by the Immortal Palace. 2 of these 4 countries were in the Jing province, and the other 2 were near the Jing province. If this disciple's guess is correct, the remaining 6 countries, including Jianghu country, will be destroyed by the Immortal Palace sooner or later. This is probably due to the contribution of this so-called land. Master, this matter is very strange. Your intuition is also reasonable. Li Xiang said from the side. The Immortal Palace has never interfered with the affairs of the hidden immortal continent on the surface. Unless a great demon of the 1,000 Demons Saint realm appears, the Immortal Palace may send troops. How could they send troops to annihilate the Taoist country this time? The premonitions of Shui Mingzi and Ao Zhantian are indeed reasonable. Xiong Yi said with a frown, "The current hidden immortal continent is really sensitive." Xiaohua's heart skipped a beat, and an extremely bad feeling arose. Others might not know the intentions of the Immortal Palace, but how could he not know? Granny, maybe the Star Sovereign Palace really did something. Xiaohua thought inwardly. The Immortal Palace probably couldn't find the culprit who killed Kong Hangu, so they simply killed all the suspects. Who knows when it will be the Black Wind Ridge's turn? Let's go, we'll enter the cave to discuss. Xiaohua looked around and turned to enter the cave. Xiong Yi and the others followed in. Xiaohua sat on the brocade chair and immediately asked, "Li Xiang, how's the backup plan for our fortune gate?" "Yes, Master knows." Li Xiang hurriedly answered, "Disciple and senior brother Lan have already found the location of the soaring Dragon Mountain range. The heaven and earth origin energy there is abundant, and there are no signs of human habitation. Junior brother Fujiwen has also explored the mountain range and said that it is very suitable to set up a formation. Disciple has already instructed Black Bear to send some subordinates to excavate some caves on the main peak of the mountain range and make some preparations. Good, this matter should not be delayed. Xiao Hua nodded. Tell the disciples that there is no need to mine in the source stone vein anymore. Pack up and prepare to move our fortune gate from the Black Wind Ridge to the Soaring Dragon Mountain Range. Also, Xiong Yi, go and call Fujiwen over. Master will bring him to the Soaring Dragon Mountain Range to set up the formation. Yes, Master. Xiong Yi agreed, and just as he was about to leave the cave, he suddenly turned back and said, Master, actually, there is no need to be so anxious. Chapter 38:17. Hearing Xiong Yi's words, Xiao Hua was rather puzzled and asked curiously, Oh, why? The 4 countries that junior brother Lan mentioned were all destroyed a year ago, and this disciple also received news that 2 months ago, something big happened at Longevity Town in the country of Shi. The Confucian cultivators can't even take care of themselves, so they won't make any moves in a short period of time. Ah? What big matter? Xiao Hua had a lot of feelings for Longevity Town, so he couldn't help but be shocked and hurriedly asked. The abbot of Jianghu Temple, Lushan, was killed. Xiong Yi just said it casually, but he didn't expect Xiao Hua to take it so seriously. He couldn't help but stand there and answer curiously. Xiao Hua frowned and asked curiously, Jianghu Temple? Lushan? That's right, when Xiao Hua left Longevity Town, Jianghu Temple was still a Taoist temple. How did it become a Buddhist temple now? And wasn't Longevity Town's Little Gold Temple? Wasn't the abbot of Little Gold Temple that Mingyu? However, Xiao Hua immediately realized that if he could leave Longevity Town, then wouldn't the people and things in Longevity Town be changed? Do you know who killed him? Xiao Hua narrowed his eyes. Was it a Confucian cultivator? It's definitely a Confucian cultivator. Xiong Yi answered with a smile. Even if it wasn't a Confucian cultivator, it's definitely a Confucian cultivator. Hiss. When Xiong Yi said this, Xiao Hua instantly sucked in a breath of cold air. His entire body froze in place, and he couldn't help but exclaim in a low voice, The Battle of Swords? Not only was Xiao Hua shocked, but Lushan's death reminded him of the Battle of Swords in Xiaoyu Continent. Now, Ci Mei, who was sitting cross-legged on Jianghu Ridge, also had a myriad of thoughts in her heart. Where was the leisurely bearing she had when she sent Lushan to Longevity Town? The current Jianghu Ridge was no longer the same as when Xiao Hua left. The entire dilapidated Jianghu Temple had been completely demolished, and even the entire Jianghu Ridge had been flattened. Right in front of Ci Mei, a 99 zhang tall Buddha statue stood in the rising sun. However, this Buddha statue was covered from top to bottom by a layer of huge yellow cloth, and the statue's true body couldn't be seen clearly. Under the Buddha statue, on the side of the Jianghu Ridge, the thousands of farmers from before had also disappeared. The farmland had also disappeared, and in its place was a Jianghu temple that was 10 times larger than the small golden temple. The fate of the world was truly a joke. The Jianghu temple and the Shaojin temple fought each other. Whoever lost would disappear from the Longevity Town. Xiao Hua transformed into Ci Hang and defeated Shaojin temple. Originally, it should have been Jianghu Monastery that won, but Ci Hang was a Buddhist, so Shaojin temple seized the victory and chased Jianghu Monastery's Shaojian, Xiaohua, and Yuanya out of Longevity Town. But now, the small golden temple had been completely forgotten by the Longevity Town. This previously unknown river and tide temple was famous far and wide. At this time, the entire Jianghu Ridge was completely surrounded by the Jianghu Ridge. The road under the Jianghu Ridge was also included in the Jianghu Monastery. Even the paddy fields under the road and the Liao River were filled up and repaired very smoothly. There were stone steps that led from the Liao River to the Jianghu Ridge, and there were rows of neatly arranged guest rooms. Normally, some good men and women would come over from the Liao River on large boats or small boats, and it was precisely from here that they went up to the Jianghu Ridge to worship the golden body of the Guanyin Bodhisattva. On the other side of the Jianghu Ridge, where the incense was at its peak, there were many temple buildings like the Hall of Great Strength. Each of them had a majestic aura and a myriad of scenes. Waves of sutra chanting came from within with a rhythm, and the occasional bell rang throughout the entire longevity town. If Xiaohua was here, he would definitely be full of praise. In just a dozen years, the entire Jianghu monastery had undergone such a great change. Moreover, this change was not caused by the Buddhist sect's disciples, but purely by the spontaneous action of the ordinary people. It could be said that man could conquer the heavens. However, even in the face of such prosperous Buddhist incense and the rhythmic sound of the wooden fish, Seme couldn't help but sigh. Sigh. She looked at the golden body of the Guanyin Bodhisattva not far in front of her. Although the golden body of the Guanyin Bodhisattva was covered by a brocade, when the endless sunlight shone on the Buddha statue, it was actually suffused with mottled colors. Within these colors, there were actually all kinds of living beings. It was truly bizarre. However, Ci Mei understood in her heart that this phenomenon was the phenomenon reflected when the extremely pure power of faith poured into the golden body of the Buddha statue. If she released her Buddhist consciousness and opened her eyes, she would definitely be able to see thousands of psyche power clustered around the power of faith flying over like waves from all directions. It was as if the power of faith had flowed into the sea and landed on this unconsecrated Buddha statue. Ci Mei didn't know what kind of good karma Ci Hang had in the past, but just by saving tens of thousands of villagers in the longevity town, Ci Mei believed that he definitely wouldn't have such abundant power of faith. However, the timing of the Guanyin Bodhisattva's appearance was too crucial. At this crucial moment, there was such a suitable opportunity. Even if Ci Hang didn't do any special good karma, this gathering of winds and clouds would push him to the peak of the karma. Under the golden body of the Guanyin Bodhisattva was another ordinary coffin. The coffin wasn't covered, and the rising sun couldn't shine on the corpse inside. A pitch-black and gloomy coldness seeped out from the coffin. Even the Buddhist light of the Guanyin Bodhisattva's golden body couldn't dispel this darkness and gloomy coldness. When Ci Mei sighed, Jingqing, who was sitting next to her and chanting softly, hurriedly stopped and asked in a low voice, "Grandmaster." Ci Mei ignored Jingqing. She stood up and slowly took a few steps back as if she was respectful to the golden body of the Guanyin Bodhisattva. Then she walked step by step to the edge of the Jianghu ridge. She stood in front of the white marble stone railings and looked up at the stone steps on the side of the Liao River. Her eyes narrowed as she thought about something. Jingqing hesitated slightly and also stood up. He followed behind Ci Mei and stood respectfully a few feet away. His gaze also fell on the stone steps. These stone steps originally led from the main road to the Jianghu ridge. It was steep and narrow. Back then, Xiaohua had rolled down here. Now, it was unknown how many times wider it was than before. However, at this time, the stone steps were filled with good men and women kneeling. They stretched from the top of the stone steps to the shore of the Liao River. In fact, on the other three sides of Jianghu Ridge, there were also many good men and women kneeling on the ground. The densely packed heads were almost endless to the naked eye. "Grandmaster?" When Jingqing saw the benevolence on Ci Mei's face, he probingly said, "These good men and women have been kneeling here for a long time. Some have been kneeling here for several days, while others have been kneeling for dozens of days. Although they haven't fasted, if they continue like this, it is very likely that some of them won't be able to hold on. When that time comes, it will be even more difficult for my Jianghu monastery. Grandmaster, how about?" The benevolence on Ci Mei's face disappeared and she indifferently asked, "How about what?" Jingqing was startled as if he heard the difference in Ci Mei's tone. Jingqing softly said, "Disciple doesn't know what to do. However, this disciple feels that we should do something. It doesn't matter what we do. Otherwise, we would truly be letting down the trust of these kind-hearted men and women." Jingqing could not answer, so he clasped his hands together and said in a low voice. Ci Mei asked with interest, "Let me ask you, what do you think we should do?" This. Jingqing was somewhat regretful and felt that he shouldn't have followed. However, if he hadn't followed, how could he have stood beside Grandmaster Ci Mei? There were so many monks in the entire Jianghu monastery. He was probably the only one who had this qualification, right? No matter what we do, disciple feels that at the very least, we should give them a promise to find the real culprit who killed Marshal Uncle Shan. Only then will we be able to live up to their trust in our Jianghu monastery. Only then will we be able to live up to their kneeling here for more than 10 days. He answered honestly. Could it be that Grandmaster doesn't think so? Alas. Ci Mei sighed again and shook her head. Jingqing, do you feel that I'm sighing because of their trust and sincerity? Then what is Grandmaster sighing about? Jingqing was somewhat dumbfounded. He felt that his brain couldn't keep up with Ci Mei's words. I'm envious of Senior Marshal Brother Ci Hang's luck. I'm sighing about my helplessness. With my current state of mind and what I've done all these years, I don't even know when I will be able to achieve fruition. I'll be able to achieve fruition in this lifetime. Ci Mei looked into the distance and said in a low voice, I'm envious of those Ku Tuchuo. Although their cultivation is difficult, their Buddhist heart is firm and untainted by any worldly affairs. This kind of cultivation is something that our Buddhist disciples should have. He, Grandmaster. Jingqing smiled and said, although Ku Tuchuo's cultivation is praised by our Buddha, our Buddhist sect has 13 Buddhas. However, our 13 Buddhist sects all have Buddhist fruits. Grandmaster, there is no need to be envious of others. Do you know? Ci Mei suddenly said, the most recent bodhisattva who achieved fruition is Nanwu Wise Manjushri Bodhisattva. Before achieving fruition, it was Ci Hui of the Green Lotus Temple of the Xiang sect. Her cultivation was only in the realm of the Bright Lotus. Disciple naturally knows this. I'm also very envious. I'll also seize the time to cultivate and strive to reach the realm of the Bright Lotus as soon as possible. Jingqing hurriedly smiled. However, he immediately regretted it. Ci Mei was already in the realm of the Lotus. Although he and Ci Hui were of the same generation, they still hadn't achieved fruition. Wouldn't his words agitate her? Fortunately, Ci Mei didn't seem to care. She shook her head slightly and said, Jingqing, you still don't understand. Have you ever seen a bodhisattva achieve fruition outside the Pure Land world? Oh, or should I say, do you know, it's far more difficult to achieve fruition outside the Pure Land world. Yes, disciple understands. Jingqing nodded and said, the Pure Land world is a place illuminated by the Buddha's light. All living beings have strong willpower, so it's relatively easy to achieve fruition. No, you don't understand at all, Ci Mei said coldly. Jingqing was shocked. He hurriedly put his palms together and asked, Grandmaster, please enlighten me. Amitabha. Ci Mei chanted the name of Buddha. She stretched out a finger and pointed at her chest, fiercely tapping it twice. This. Jingqing was really at a loss. It wasn't that he wasn't proficient in Buddhism. It was just that what Ci Mei said exceeded what he had learned. He really didn't understand where the Zen principle of Ci Mei's action was. Chapter 38:18. Heart. Today, Ci Mei was different from the past. She didn't scold Jingqing too much and didn't let Jingqing comprehend it himself. Instead, she said, if you don't have a Buddha's heart, even in the Pure Land world, it's hard to attain enlightenment. Of course I know. Jingqing said bitterly. He said in a low voice, I came to the hidden immortal continent and became the abbot of the Cloud Forest Temple. Didn't I preach the Dharma and have a Buddha's heart? Your Buddha's heart is only a Buddha's heart and a Buddha's heart. It's not the Buddha's heart. Ci Mei hit the nail on the head. Not only you, even I have lost my Buddha's heart. Hiss. Jingqing was shocked and asked hurriedly, what? Why? What's a Buddha's heart? If I knew what a Buddha's heart was, I would be like Senior Brother Ci Hang and Manjushri. Ci Mei answered. Then, she looked back at the coffin under the golden body and said, actually, when I sent kindness to Jianghu Temple, the Buddha's heart that I could have was already gone. Jingqing's body trembled and his voice trembled. Could it be that Grandmaster knew that there would be such a day? No, I didn't know. Ci Mei shook her head. Or I buried my head in the monk's robe. I didn't want to know. However, I heard the news that kindness was killed. I knew that kindness was the first, but he's definitely not the last. No one knows who the last one will be. No one knows when the last one will be. But I understand. Jing Qing seemed to have suddenly realized something and said hurriedly, "The Buddha's heart that Grandmaster talked about is a heart that is clear and not tainted by the mortal world. We are Buddhas outside the Pure Land world who aim to promote the Dharma. How can we not be tainted by the mortal world and be clear?" "That's right, Jing Qing. You finally got something." C.I. Mei smiled. "I'm very gratified. But, Grandmaster, if we didn't promote the Dharma, how could there be so many believers? How could our Buddha's light shine on the hidden immortals?" Jing Qing asked. C.I. Mei nodded again. "That's right. If we don't subdue demons and protect Buddha, how can we be Buddhist protectors? If it weren't for us sacrificing our hearts to impart the teachings, how could the Buddha's light reach so far?" "Alas, disciple understands why Grandmaster sighs." Jing Qing sighed as well. He looked at the 99 feet tall Buddha statue and said, "This disciple is also envious of Ku Tuchuo's bitter cultivation. Since you know, will you still make a promise to these kind men and women?" C.I. Mei asked again. Jing Qing shook his head slightly. "I can't give you this promise, nor can I." They might have thought that they were doing what they were supposed to do, but they didn't expect that the same kneeling would have different effects at different times. In 9 years, they prayed for blessings for the people 9 times, and the golden body of Namo Guanyin Bodhisattva 9 times. Every time, the Confucian cultivators were defeated by the people. This time, they were still kneeling and kowtowing. However, they were not praying for blessings, they were forcing him. "You are forcing my Buddhist sect." That's right. In 9 years, the Confucian cultivators destroyed the golden body of Namo Guanyin Bodhisattva 9 times. In 9 years, it was these unarmed believers who reconstructed the golden body of Namo Guanyin Bodhisattva 9 times. How majestic is the power of the people's will. It's also this majestic power that forced Lishan to his death. It's also this majestic belief that killed millions or even tens of millions of lives. C.I. Mei sighed. This is the believer's fault? Or the Buddhist Lord's fault? Or is it my fault? None of them. Jing Qing shook his head. It's the Confucian cultivators' fault. They shouldn't have challenged my Buddhist sect's bottom line time and time again. They shouldn't have killed Martial Uncle Lishan, who didn't even have the strength to truss a chicken. Do you think this is the work of the Confucian cultivators? C.I. Mei asked. Jing Qing shook his head and said, "This disciple doesn't know either. It's just that Martial Uncle Lishan's body was injured by the water essence. Even if the Confucian cultivators wanted to get away with it, it's impossible for them to get away with it. Even if the Chongyun sect withdrew Longevity Academy from Longevity Town after Martial Uncle Lishan came to Longevity Town and even secretly sent experts to protect him, they still can't eliminate their suspicions. The water Qi Chaoyuan is a common cultivation method of Confucian cultivators in the Zhangxian continent. Except for the demons in the Thousand Demons sacred realm, even the disciples of Buddhism and Taoism can cultivate the pure water Qi Chaoyuan genuine Qi, let alone Confucian cultivators. Ah? Buddhist disciples? This isn't very possible? Jing Qing turned pale with fright when he heard this. He lowered his head to look at the monk chanting sutras in the distance and said, "Grandmaster, you're saying? My heart is no longer a Buddhist heart. It's hard to avoid thinking too much." C.I. Mei wasn't surprised by Jing Qing's reaction. This might be what some Buddhist disciples think. "No, I don't believe it." Jing Qing shook his head. "I still think that it's either the Confucian cultivators who killed Martial Uncle Lishan and forced our Buddhist sect to withdraw from the hidden immortal continent, or it's the remnants of the Taoist sect who killed Martial Uncle Lishan and wanted to provoke a war between us immortals and Buddhas so that their Taoist sect can benefit from it. Therefore, Grandmaster, we must find the real culprit." Jing Qing, you still don't understand? The truth of the matter is actually no longer important. C.I. Mei shook her head. What's important is that Longevity Town, the #1 town of our Buddhist sect in the hidden Immortal continent, the #1 Taoist sect of our Namo Guanyin Bodhisattva in the hidden Immortal continent, and Abbot Lashan was killed by the Confucian cultivators. This is the most important thing. Grandmaster, what do you mean? Jing Cheng's face suddenly turned ashen. He seemed to have thought of something and cried out in surprise. Swoosh! At this moment, a Buddhist light flashed in the distant sky, and a Buddhist document fell in front of C.I. Mei. C.I. Mei reached out and scanned it with her Buddhist awareness. Her calm face slightly frowned and relaxed. She put the Buddhist document into her monk robe and said faintly, 10 days ago, the Yu province Confucian cultivator Shui Song state was destroyed by the Buddhist sect's Ji state. 253,000 people died. The Ho state was destroyed by the Confucian sect's Sun state and the Taoist sect's Yong state. 510,000 people died. 510,000 people? Jing Cheng was shocked. How could there be so many? The Yu province sect's Spirit Mountains Chu Feng sect was destroyed by the Buddhist sect's Dilian state. 30,000 people died. The Yu province Jilian Mountains Lianzhang temple was destroyed by an unknown Confucian cultivator. 603 people died. It's a mess, a mess. Jing Cheng bit his lips and seemed to be in disbelief. Swoosh! Before Jing Cheng finished speaking, several Buddhist lights flew from all directions to C.I. Mei's hand as if they had agreed beforehand. The Jing province's Chu family destroyed the Wind and Rain temple. The Buddhist sect's Ji state captured the Confucian sect's Ming state and the Mengji state. The death toll is unknown. The Duanmu family sent an emissary with the family head's order to command the Yu province and the Liang province's Confucian state to destroy the nearby Buddhist state. The monks of the Ji province's Xiaolin temple, Linjiang temple, and Great Pine temple died suddenly. The Jing Mountain sect, Yunfeng sect, and Jilin Academy's defenses were also broken by an unknown force. The death toll is uncountable. The 3 Buddhist states of Gun province, the Xiangbai state, the Pure Moon state, and the Lianxin state, the Qing province's Jiyun temple, and the Cheng state have sent soldier monks to reinforce our Rivertide temple and resist the Confucian cultivators together. C.I. Mei took the Buddhist archives, scanned them with her Buddhist awareness, and read them one by one. Every time she read a message, Jing Cheng's body trembled. In the end, he couldn't help but say, Grandmaster, aren't they causing trouble? Don't they know this is strange? Don't they know the seriousness of this matter? The first town of the Buddhist state. This is also the first golden Buddha statue on the hidden Immortal continent. C.I. Mei put away the Buddhist archives and said with a sigh, these Buddhas and Buddhist states, whether they have the intention or not, they can't not come. There must be some truth and some lies in these messages. Jing Cheng suddenly said in a low voice, maybe Grandmaster can find the culprit. C.I. Mei asked in reply, if you did this, would you still draw legs on a snake? Jing Cheng was speechless. Swoosh! Suddenly, another Buddhist light flew from afar. However, this Buddhist archive didn't land in front of C.I. Mei, but in Jing Cheng's hand. Jing Cheng didn't dare to be negligent. He hastily grabbed it and scanned it with his Buddhist awareness. His expression immediately changed again, and he hurriedly sent it to C.I. Mei's hand while shouting, Grandmaster, the 10 Confucian states of Yu province have jointly sent 1,000,000 troops to besiege our Longevity town. They're preparing to forcibly disperse the believers and topple the golden body of Guanyin Bodhisattva. C.I. Mei was also shocked when she saw this. They really dare to make a move. That's right, Grandmaster. What does the Buddhist Lord plan to do? Jing Cheng asked. C.I. Mei smiled bitterly and said, how can I know what the Buddha's plan is? I'm afraid that even the immortal palace of Confucian cultivators doesn't know, right? Woo! At this moment, a violent explosion suddenly sounded in the distant sky. Then, a fist of several acres in size rolled up thousands of pillars of great qi and smashed toward the golden body of Guanyin Bodhisattva faster than a meteorite falling from the sky. Amitabha! How dare you! C.I. Mei chanted the name of Buddha, and the Buddhist light flashed around her body. She slapped her forehead and her psyche power rushed out. The Buddhist light rushed into the sky like rolling clouds and condensed into the shape of a huge lotus. This lotus was several acres in size, and there were hundreds of tiny heavenly dragons swimming in it. Layers of Sanskrit characters gushed out with the heavenly dragons, and in the void shrouded by the lotus, chanting came out. Boom! The fist landed on the lotus. The light of Buddha was annihilated and turned into rolling inscriptions. The fist was also penetrated by the light of Buddha and turned into thousands of inscriptions. The huge airwave not only lifted the silk cloth outside the golden body of Guanyin Bodhisattva, but also blew tens of thousands of devotees in the vicinity of Jianghu Ridge to the ground. Ci Mei's body swayed slightly, and a touch of red flashed across her forehead. "Ha, Ci Mei, you're just SOS." An arrogant voice sounded, "This is just a little warning from me. I won't take your life today. However, I heard that your Nirvana world has sent Buddhist generals and soldier monks to the Immortal town. Today, I'll tell you one thing. If any of them set foot in the Immortal town, I'll wash the Jianghu temple with blood. I'll kill tens of thousands of your believers." Chapter 38:19. Amitabha. Ci Mei didn't show any weakness. She chanted Buddha's name and used lion's roar. "I have no attachment to life and no worries about death. My Buddha is from the heart to the heavens. Today, my Jianghu temple will be cleansed and your Duanmu family will be destroyed. Haha, then we'll wait and see." That arrogant voice laughed loudly and flew away like a whirlwind. "Duanmu family?" Jingqing trembled slightly and cried out in surprise, "Why would a secondary rank 1 scholarly family appear now? Is this the Duanmu family's patriarch?" "It's not Duanmu Tianji." Ci Mei's face was somewhat pale as she said softly, "Duanmu Lianheng, a disciple of the Duanmu family who has the highest chance of becoming a literary saint." "Literary saint?" Jingqing didn't know what to say. Looking at the abnormally embarrassed monks and believers around him, he said softly, "What about these believers who came to pray? Persuade them to leave." At this moment, Ci Mei also made up her mind. "They can only force us here. It's enough that they have the heart." "But..." Jingqing smiled bitterly. "I heard that the Buddhist believers of the hidden Immortal continent's 9 prefectures are also coming to my Jianghu temple. How can we stop them? Even these believers? I feel that we might not be able to persuade them to leave." "If they don't leave," Ci Mei bit her lips and said softly, "then it'll be a great war between immortals and Buddhas." Just as Ci Mei finished speaking, an earth-shattering sword cry sounded from the direction Duanmu Lianheng flew away from. It couldn't help but cover Ci Mei's words. Even the chanting of the tens of thousands of monks and the sound of the wooden fish bell were annihilated. Tens of thousands of believers couldn't help but cover their ears with their hands, and a painful expression appeared on their faces. Ci Mei looked up in shock. She saw a giant sword in the sky that was like a flying immortal, flashing with extremely dazzling sword brilliance. It swept up in almost unparalleled power and fell towards the golden body of Guanyin Bodhisattva beside her. The sound of the sword chime also shook the sky with the sound of thunder. Woo woo woo. Following the appearance of the sword light, a dozen powerful wills suddenly appeared around Jianghu Ridge. As soon as these wills appeared, they immediately stirred up powerful winds and tornadoes. All the wills flew in all directions. Ci Mei was shocked. Not only was she shocked by the shocking sword, but she was also shocked by the consciousness hidden in the surroundings. Needless to say, it must be the consciousness of those strong Confucian cultivators, and it must be the doing of the strong cultivators who paid attention to the river and tide temple. She had been here for so long, but she did not notice it. Although she did not know whether they knew who killed kindness, but what she had just said. However, Ci Mei didn't have time to think too much about it. The style of that sword was truly dazzling, and the ferocity of that sword was truly arrogant. Everyone's heart gave birth to a kind of reverence and a kind of fear. It was as if they were ants under this sword light. Amitabha. Ci Mei's eyes were filled with determination. The light of Buddha appeared under her feet, and the light of Buddha surged around her. As C.I. Mei flew up into the sky, the light of Buddha flickered, and C.I. Mei's transcendence golden body grew bigger. A huge lotus, even more compassionate than before, went to meet the sword light. Grandmaster? Beside her, Jing Cheng was shocked. Even with his cultivation, he could see that C.I. Mei was no match for this sword light. If she flew out this time, C.I. Mei had no other choice but to fall into the cycle of reincarnation. Amitabha. C.I. Mei's light of Buddha was almost annihilated by the sword light. However, just as she was about to die, another Buddhist chant resounded through the sky. This Buddhist chant was unusually compassionate. When people heard it, they immediately felt an indescribable vicissitudes of life. Then, thousands of flowers bloomed in the sky above C.I. Mei. Under each flower, there was a heavenly dragon supporting it, and beside each flower, there were fairies dancing. Within each flower, there were countless Buddhist scriptures being chanted. Strands of telekinesis appeared from the void and surrounded the flowers, enveloping the entire longevity town. When C.I. Mei saw this, joy appeared on her face. Rumble! The sword light suddenly descended, and the thousands of flowers were annihilated. It was as if the thousands of small worlds had disappeared. However, while the Arhat was still in shock, the myriad of creatures appeared once more. Thousands of flowers surged out from the heavenly dragon. Pung! The sword light shone brightly and sank into the flowers in a few breaths of time. The light on the sword light turned into thousands of tiny child bodies. The child bodies spat out sword light and killed the heavenly dragon under the flowers. Roar! A loud dragon roar suddenly came from the flowers again. 9 dragon bodies rushed out and instantly turned into 10,000 feet long dragons that pounced at the flying sword with their fangs bared and claws brandished. Boom! Countless fireflies flew out and waves of impact spread out in all directions. However, because the longevity town was protected by the flowers, it wasn't damaged at all. Amidst the explosion, a squarish flying sword was revealed. This flying sword looked ordinary, but the almost edgeless flying sword gave off an awe-inspiring majesty that made people tremble in fear. Under the flying sword, the 9 dragons also disappeared. A 9-dragon staff flashed with treasure light. The treasure light swayed as if it was filled with mercy. Amitabha! A faint Buddhist chant shook the sky. A bright Buddhist cloud appeared from where the staff came from and slowly flew over. Before the Buddhist cloud got close, a faint voice sneered. The Buddha Kingdom's new Manjushri Bodhisattva actually came to my burial immortal continent. It really is my burial immortal continent's fortune. Since it's Manjushri Bodhisattva, this old man will give you face and see how your Thunder Sound Temple handles this matter. If it's not to my liking, this old man will come back and cut down your golden Buddha statue. With that, the sword turned into a rainbow and flew away. The source of the voice was covered in white clouds, making it impossible to see who it was. Amitabha, thank you Sandalwood. The sword left and the Bodhisattva came. A faint voice came from the Buddhist light. From where the Buddhist cloud came from, a Manjushri Bodhisattva rode on a green lion. He had a green lotus in his left hand and a treasure sword in his right hand. Looking at the Buddha's light behind Manjushri's head condensing into a mirror, and the power of faith flowing like a river, C.I. Mei felt a stabbing pain in her heart for no reason. He knew in his heart that even if C.I. Hui was only in the state of bright eye before achieving fruition, as a bodhisattva, C.I. Hui could use the Buddha's light and the power of faith of hundreds of millions of believers with the help of the Buddha's fruit behind her head. Even the power of faith accumulated in her previous life could be used in this life. This was the true power of bodhisattva. C.I. Mei didn't dare to be negligent. He quickly knelt in the air and chanted, Disciple C.I. Mei greets Manjushri Bodhisattva. Get up. Manjushri Bodhisattva came down from the green lion and waved his hand. The 9-dragon staff fell into his hand and turned into an ordinary staff. Thank you Bodhisattva. C.I. Mei got up and said in a low voice, Disciple sent a Buddhist letter to Leiyin Temple before coming to Jianghu Temple. Disciple didn't expect Bodhisattva to come to Longevity Town so quickly. What Buddhist message did Buddha send? Well, Manjushri Bodhisattva was a little embarrassed. He then said frankly, I came under Buddha's Buddhist message. But this message has nothing to do with Longevity Town. I just saw that Jianghu Temple was in a critical situation. I couldn't bear to see Guanyin Bodhisattva's golden body suffer, so I helped. Ah? C.I. Mei was stunned. He looked at Manjushri Bodhisattva in disbelief. He really didn't understand why Bodhisattva who wouldn't leave Leiyin Temple would suddenly come to hidden Immortal continent. Was there something more important than Longevity Town and Guanyin Bodhisattva's golden body? Was there something more important than the war between immortals and Buddhas? There were still many things that C.I. Mei didn't know. In the most southwest of the hidden Immortal continent, close to the East Sea, a huge storm had just passed through the gloomy sky. The sky seemed to have been trampled by thousands of black horses. Between the layers of clouds, the glaring sunlight streaked through the gaps and shone on the roaring waves on the coast of the East Sea. The waves were like beautiful flowers. In the sea of flowers, a wooden plank that looked like a boat broke through the waves. There were two people standing on the log. The one in front was a young monk who looked to be about 17 or 18 years old. The monk had red lips and white teeth, giving him an indescribably handsome appearance. However, his bald head and moon-white monk robes made the monk's temperament seem otherworldly. Not only was he handsome, his pair of bright eyes shone brighter than the stars in the night sky. These starry eyes revealed an incomparable benevolence and indescribable vicissitudes. Behind the monk, there was a stooped boatman holding a worn-out oar and rowing weakly. The boatman was wearing a straw hat. Occasionally, he would raise his head and look at the monk's back. But every time, the boatman's eyes would be filled with puzzlement. About a few miles behind the log they were sitting on, there were bits of wood, ropes, and cloth scattered all over the place, as if a huge ship had just met with danger in the waves. Not long after, the plank reached the shore. The monk jumped down from the plank and stood steadily in the water. He then turned around and said in a low voice, Amitba, boatman, this poor monk will help you down the boat. The boatman threw away the oar and walked over with difficulty. The monk carefully supported the boatman and helped him to the shore. Then he respectfully clasped his hands and bowed. This little monk thanks Sandalwood. If it wasn't for Sandalwood, this little monk would have been buried in the fish's stomach like the others. You're welcome. The boatman waved his hand. His voice was a bit high-pitched, but I don't know why this little monk didn't cultivate in the Pure Land world. Why did you come to the hidden Immortal continent from the Pure Land world? What plans do you have in the future? Sandalwood is wrong. The monk smiled. As long as you have Buddha in your heart, you can cultivate anywhere. Whether it is the Pure Land world or the hidden Immortal continent. This poor monk wants to go to Longevity Town. Sandalwood's ship has been destroyed. I don't know what plans you have. Unfortunately, this poor monk is penniless and can't help Sandalwood. How about Sandalwood follow this poor monk to Longevity Town? Maybe this poor monk can ask the temple in Longevity Town to help Sandalwood. Chapter 38:20. Hee, little monk, you don't have to worry about my matters. I have my own place to settle down. Who knows where your Longevity Town is? You, a little monk, can go there to beg for alms, but how can I go there? Do I have to walk there with you? The boatman waves his hand and says, let's bid farewell here. Amitba, Tanyue is right, this poor monk thanks Tanyue. The monk bows, but then he seems to have thought of something and hurriedly says, oh right, Tanyue, if you go to the Pure Land world again, you can go to the Jinshan temple beside the Qin River. This poor monk is a monk there. You already know this poor monk's dharma name, it is Chuanzong. This poor monk has a junior named Mingxin. He will give Tanyue some compensation. Alright, little monk. This old man already knows. Go quickly. The boatman stretches and says, this old man is already old. This trip across the sea will be my last. If there are no accidents, this old man will not go to the Pure Land world again. Then, Chuanzong is a bit embarrassed and says in a low voice, then what can this poor monk do for Tanyue? Otherwise, this poor monk will not be able to live with it. How about this? The boatman thinks for a while and says with a smile, I wonder if you can meet Mahavarakana? This poor monk does not know. Chuanzong answers honestly. The boatman says with a smile, how about this, if you meet Mahavarakana, help me ask how many years I can live. If you can't, then forget it. Western Paradise? Lei Temple? Hearing this, Chuanzong's eyes flash with a trace of splendor, his fair face seems to blush, and he puts his palms together. That's right, this poor monk's goal in this life is Western Paradise. Don't worry, Tanyue, this poor monk will definitely go to Lei Temple in Western Paradise. When this poor monk meets Mahavarakana, this poor monk will definitely help Tanyue ask about this matter. However, what is Tanyue's name? How should this poor monk tell the revered one? Just say that you are a fisherman on the river. The boatman turns his eyes and answers, Mahavarakana has searched all 3 continents. He must know this old man. Chuanzong nodded. I will remember. Old Tanyue, take care. After saying that, Chuanzong put his palms together and bowed. He looked at the direction and walked away step by step. His footsteps were firm, and his figure was vigorous, as if he had been walking for hundreds of years. When Chuanzong was far away, the boatman's body flashed and revealed the appearance of an ape. However, this ape was wearing chainmail and held a magic staff in his hand. He looked very mighty. Wasn't this the fire ape Yuan Tongtian? Strange. Yuan Tongtian looked at the almost invisible Chuanzong and asked in confusion, why does Master want me to protect this monk? It was really unreasonable. Furthermore, this monk did not have the slightest bit of Buddhist cultivation. He could not even take a single step forward. From the western land of ultimate bliss to the hidden immortal continent, he had to rely on the sea boat alone. If it wasn't for my protection on the sea boat, this monk would have already been fed to the fishes. Why did he come to the longevity town of the hidden immortal continent instead of cultivating in the Jinshan temple? Also, the so-called Western Paradise, Lei Temple, isn't it in the Pure Land world? Even I, who is not a monk, know about it. Why doesn't this little monk know about it? Isn't he going to the Lei Temple in the Pure Land world? Why did he come to the hidden immortal continent? Sigh, forget it, forget it. Master has given me a new life. Master told me to protect him. I will protect him. As long as I didn't find the wrong person. Yuan Tongtian scratched his ears and cheeks for a moment. He gritted his teeth and rushed into the air. From afar, he watched Chuanzong walk step by step into the depths of the hidden immortal continent. Isn't this Chuanzong the Jianghu that Xiaohua brought from the Xiaoyu continent to the western land of ultimate bliss? Chuanzong naturally came to the hidden immortal continent because of the Buddhist edict from the Lei Temple. However, as for the Western Paradise, is it the Lei Temple in the Pure Land world? Or is it the Western Paradise in Xiaohua's space? That is not something that Chuanzong can distinguish. Even more so, it is not something that Yuan Tongtian can know. Who knows when Chuanzong will be able to find it? After walking for half a day, Chuanzong saw a fishing village in front of him. A net that was more than 10 zhang long was hung on a wooden frame to dry. A few fishermen were lying on the hillside basking in the sun while a few fisherwomen were repairing the net. Chuanzong licked his somewhat dry lips. He quickened his pace and walked forward. Before he could get close, a group of children playing on the hillside on the left saw him. A few timid ones quickly ran back to the adults. The remaining bold ones quickly ran down the hillside and stared at Chuanzong from afar. They looked at his monk robe and bald head. Little monk, you came from the Western Paradise? A fisherwoman not far from Chuanzong raised her head. Her hands did not stop working as she shouted again. Amitba. Chuanzong respectfully saluted and said, this poor monk came from the Jinshan temple in the Pure Land world. I want to go to the immortal town in the Shi country of Yu province. This poor monk encountered a tsunami on the East Sea. Right now my mouth is thirsty. Can I ask benefactress to give me a bowl of water to drink? Hee little monk, you are so soft and tender. You actually crossed the ocean. When the fisherwoman heard that Chuanzong really came from the Western Paradise, she was not surprised. She smiled and said, the tsunami a few days ago was indeed rare. In this small village, 4 people were killed. However, for a Buddhist expert like this little monk, it is nothing. Speaking of this, the fisherwoman suddenly woke up. She asked in surprise, "Little monk, what did you say? You want to drink water? You monks with great magical powers still need to drink water?" In this fisherwoman's view, which monk who came from the western paradise to the hidden immortal continent did not fly over the fisherman and fisherwoman's head? Which one of them would come to this small fishing village? Even if there were monks who would come to ask for directions, who would come step by step, who would ask for water to drink. This poor monk specializes in chanting Buddhist scriptures. I don't know Buddhist magical powers. I have a mortal body. Of course, I know that I am thirsty. Chuanzong's expression did not change. He replied with a smile. When the fisherwoman heard this, her eyes were immediately filled with respect. No one knew the dangers of the Eastern Sea better than them who made a living in the sea. Chuanzong, a mortal, actually came from the Western paradise to the hidden immortal continent. Ordinary people could not imagine the hardships he experienced. Amitabha, the fisherwoman, also said the name of Buddha. She hurriedly put down the work in her hand, squatted down, and took out a small black porcelain jar from the side of a stone. She took off the small bowl covering the jar, pulled a cloth from her head and carefully wiped it. She poured a bowl of water in front of Chuanzong and said respectfully, "This monk is also an eminent monk. Please drink." "Thank you, benefactress." Chuanzong hurriedly took it over and drank it slowly, without spilling a single drop of water on the table. When Chuanzong returned the small bowl, he asked again, "Benefactress, this poor monk also wants to ask, how far is Yuzhou from here? Is this poor monk going in the right direction?" The fisherwoman was very hesitant and said embarrassedly, "This servant only knows that this place is the border of Jianghu. This servant does not know where Yuzhou is." At this point, the fisherwoman hurriedly called out to the several children beside her, "Second fish, third fish, quickly go and call your father." "Yes, mother." The two children who looked very strong responded cheerfully and ran to the hillside. They also called out, "Father, father." The two children ran away, and the other children also ran away. "Master, drink some more water." The fisherwoman finally thought of a title and hurriedly picked up the jar again. "Thank you, benefactress." Chuanzong licked his dry lips and said with a nod. Not long after, a man with a naked upper body and clothes hanging on his waist quickly walked over. He looked at Chuanzong with vigilance and then asked in surprise, "Second fish's mother, what's the matter?" "His father." The fisherwoman rebuked, "Quickly put on your clothes. This is an eminent monk from the Western paradise. He wants to ask how to get to Yuzhou. Just fly in that direction." The man pointed with his finger without hesitation. "His father. He's asking how to get there." The fisherwoman poked the man and reminded him. The man was stunned. He looked up and down at Chuanzong and asked curiously, "Since the master can fly, why do you want to walk?" The fisherwoman hurriedly said, "This master is different from the previous ones. He can't fly. He wants to walk to Yuzhou." The man was like a cat whose tail was stepped on. He almost jumped up and said in surprise, "You want to walk to Yuzhou? This place is less than 100,000 miles away from Yuzhou? Won't you have to walk for 8 to 10 years? The man naturally did not walk too far. Naturally, he did not know how long it would take to walk to Yuzhou. His words could only be guessed. However, when Chuanzong heard this, he smiled and still put his palms together and said, "Amitabha, no matter how far it is, this poor monk will go. This is my Buddha's decree." Amitabha. Chuanzong had a kind of infectious power. It was a kind of propaganda that came from the inside out. Regardless of whether it was his actions or words, they were filled with a kind of heavy dharma. People could not help but feel respect and worship in their hearts. The fisherman who was originally vigilant immediately chanted Buddha's name. "The master is really an eminent monk." Second fish's mother, "Quickly prepare some dry food and give it to the master. I'll go and ask for the way to Yuzhou. Master, please wait here for a moment." "Thank you, benefactors. Just ask for the way. There's no need to prepare any dry food. This poor monk can just ask for alms wherever he goes." Chuanzong said amiably. "That won't do." The fisherwoman hurriedly shouted, This place is very far from the other fishing villages. If the master doesn't bring some dry food, I'm afraid he will starve to death on the way. No matter. This poor monk can also eat the wild fruits and other things on the way. Chuanzong smiled and waved his hand. This poor monk came from Jinshan Temple like this. When they heard that Chuanzong came to hidden Immortal continent by eating wild fruits, the two fishermen's hearts softened. The fisherman waved his hand domineeringly and said, "Master, if you don't take this dry food, I won't ask for directions for you. How about I send you to Yuzhou?" Chapter 38:21. That's right. The fisherwoman agreed with her husband's statement and said, threateningly, "If you don't bring these dry rations, I will never let you go." Amitba, thank you two benefactors. Chunzong smiled slightly, really radiating Buddha light. He put his palms together and thanked them. The two fishermen went away happily. Alas, this little monk is really strange. In the distance, Yuan Tongtian shook his head helplessly. What Chunzong said was what he saw with his own eyes. This Chunzong really ate wild fruits, drank spring water, and walked step by step from Xinjiang to the South Sea, then from the South Sea to the East Sea to the Tibetan Immortal continent. Of course, since Yuan Tongtian wanted to protect Chunzong, he would not really let him starve to death. At the most critical moment, Yuan Tongtian would also let Chunzong, accidentally, find some wild fruits to fill his stomach, but Yuan Tongtian absolutely did not dare to do it because he knew that although Chunzong did not have the cultivation of Buddhism, as long as he slacked off a little, he would definitely be discovered by him. This strange behavior is really comparable to masters. Yuan Tongtian retracted his gaze and looked at the distant Elysium. He secretly sighed in his heart, but with this look, Yuan Tongtian's eyes were hazy again. "Master, where is he? Is he okay?" The master that Yuan Tongtian thought of course, would not be in Elysium. Now Xiaohua was sitting in the sky above the soaring Dragon Mountain range. His hands were forming gestures, and he was very careful to activate his spiritual power. As the gestures flashed, a dark red brilliance was born in the mountain range below him, and then it swept a few miles like a flame. However, in this flame, even the flowers and grass did not suffer any damage, and they were still swaying in the wind. After waiting for half a day, Xiaohua's figure flew for dozens of miles and stopped. He waved his hand and took out a few elixirs from the space and put them into his mouth. He smacked his lips and shook his head helplessly. Damn, this sect protection array is really not easy, and combining a defensive array like the Capital Star Array with two offensive arrays, the Pleiades Demon Devouring Immortal Array and the Golden Crow Immortal Slaying Demon Array is really difficult. I originally intended to let Xiong Yi and the other two help, but now it seems that I can only let them comprehend a part of the array first. With their current cultivation, it is already good that they can freely control it. This Xiao is destined to be exhausted. Speaking up to here, Xiaohua looked towards the direction of the country of Xi and muttered to himself, "I wonder what's happening over there." However, what does it have to do with this Xiao whether they are in chaos or not? If I release my divine sense, I will be able to see it. But once I release my divine sense, it will immediately be seen by others. Why would they come looking for trouble for no reason? Why don't we just set up camp here and enjoy ourselves? That day, when Xiong Yi said that Longevity Town's master Liaoshan was killed by a Confucian cultivator, Xiaohua immediately thought of the Sword Dao battle on Dawn Rain Continent. The current situation in Longevity Town was so similar to the situation before the Sword Dao battle on Dawn Rain Continent. How could Xiaohua possibly visit a place where a few words could ignite a fire? He turned around and flew to the Soaring Dragon Mountain range with Xiong Yi. While observing the Soaring Dragon Mountain range, he thought about how to set up the sect protecting formation. At the same time, he urged the Black Bear Spirit and the others to quickly move the Black Wind Ridges belongings to the Soaring Dragon Mountain range. He knew better than anyone that if the Immortal Palace made trouble, his Black Wind Ridge would definitely bear the brunt. After all, he was the culprit of the Yaotai Mountain. However, he didn't know if the situation in Longevity Town was too sensitive, or if the Immortal Palace didn't think of attacking Black Wind Ridge, which was not too far away from Longevity Town, or if the Immortal Palace didn't realize that Xiao Hua was the culprit. In this half a year, everything in Black Wind Ridge was moved to the soaring Dragon Mountain Range. Moreover, Xiao Hua spent a lot of effort to gradually set up the capital star array that he had successfully comprehended, as well as the Pleiades demon-devouring immortal array and the Golden Crow immortal-slaying demon array that he had comprehended. However, he didn't see half a shadow of the Immortal Palace's immortal soldiers and immortal generals, nor did he receive any other special information. Under Xiao Hua's soul technique, the Immortal Palace that had been patrolling Black Wind Ridge didn't notice anything strange about Black Wind Ridge. In order to not alert the Immortal Palace, Xiao Hua never bothered to send messages to them. Presumably, this was one of the reasons. Master. While Xiao Hua was resting, Imperial Prince Lan flew over from afar and bowed. You've worked hard. Then, Xiao Hua nodded. If you don't want this old man to work hard, you all should hurry up and comprehend the array and help me set it up. Master. Imperial Prince Lan smiled bitterly at first, then said with a flattering smile, it's not that this disciple doesn't want to help Master. It's just that Master's array is truly wondrous. Even little junior brother can't comprehend it. It's better for this disciple to assist Master. The little junior brother that Imperial Prince Lan spoke of was naturally Fujiwen. Fujiwen's array Dao was relatively profound, but if he were to comprehend the array formed by the 3 innate divine restrictions, it would be beyond his cultivation and knowledge. In fact, not to mention Fujiwen, even the Gongshu family's lass could only stand at the side and give pointers. If she were to help Xiao Hua set up the array, she would also be unable to do so. You still need to cultivate more. Xiao Hua said helplessly. This array Dao will be part of my Fortune Gates lineage in the future. Yes, this disciple understands. Hearing this, Imperial Prince Lan's heart was filled with admiration. The longer he followed Xiao Hua, the more he felt that Xiao Hua's cultivation was unfathomable. It could even be said that Xiao Hua was omnipotent. What smithing, what alchemy, what array Dao. Every single one of them was a breath of fresh air to Imperial Prince Lan. They were all out of his reach. This array Dao will be managed by little junior brother in the future. This disciple will depend on his own luck. There is no jealousy in your heart. This breadth of mind is much stronger than before. Xiao Hua nodded. Just based on this breadth of mind, this old man's teaching of you was not in vain. Yes, Master. Imperial Prince Lan straightened his face and said, Master said that to become an immortal, this disciple remembers clearly. Only with Master's breadth of mind can this disciple be worthy of being Master's disciple. This flattery, Master is gratified. Xiao Hua suddenly said such a sentence, making His Highness Lan stare blankly for a moment. Then with a slightly embarrassed smile, he said, Disciple came today to inform Master that everything in the Black Wind Mountain Range has already been transferred to the soaring Dragon Mountain Range. He Xiong asked this disciple to inform Master that there are too many origin stone veins underground. Not to mention the ones we have yet to excavate, just the ones we have are enough to mine for several years. This disciple has tried various methods, but none of them are ideal and can't speed up the progress. This disciple asks Master to make a decision. So it's like this. Xiao Hua pondered for a moment and said, when you return to the Black Wind Ridge, tell He Xiong and the others to come to the soaring Dragon Mountain Range. You don't need to worry about the origin stone veins anymore. Yes, Master. Imperial Prince Lan added, also, recently, some Confucian cultivators have come to harass my Black Wind Ridge. Then let them be. Xiao Hua smiled and said, they are just some clowns, no need to pay attention to them. Also, there is news from the Longevity Town. Some Confucian cultivator family wanted to topple the Buddha statue on the Jianghu Ridge, but the Buddhist sect's Manjushri Bodhisattva appeared and scared them away. Many believers rushed to the Longevity Town, wanting to see the true face of the Bodhisattva. Oh? He came to the hidden immortal continent? Xiao Hua smiled and thought of the little monk Ci Hui. Master, you know this Manjushri Bodhisattva? Imperial Prince Lan was slightly stunned and asked probingly. He is a bodhisattva from the Laiyin Temple. I know him, but he might not know me. Xiaohua smiled and said, I only saw him before he attained enlightenment. Who is this Buddhist sect's Manjushri Bodhisattva? Imperial Prince Lan smiled and said, this is the first time disciple has heard of him. Manjushri Bodhisattva is indeed Manjushri Bodhisattva. Xiaohua replied, since attaining enlightenment is separated from the secular world, if I mention the past again, it would be disrespectful to him. Alright, disciple won't ask any more. Imperial Prince Lan knew that Xiaohua was unwilling to answer, so he smiled and said, also, there are two very important news. Xiong Yi's senior brother asked disciple to tell master. There are actually two? Xiaohua said with a smile. Yes, the first is that Jiasa was destroyed. Imperial Prince Lan's words were shocking. Xiaohua was shocked. Destroyed by who? Master did not pay attention to this recently. Such a big thing happened near my Black Wind Ridge? Naturally, it was Bronze Pillar Country, Gu Country, and Jiming Country. Prince Lan explained, Master didn't make things difficult for the Bronze Pillar Kingdom. Although the Bronze Pillar Kingdom's national power had declined, its national strength was still there. The Bronze Pillar Kingdom joined forces with the Gu Kingdom and the Jiming Kingdom to destroy the Jasa Kingdom in one fell swoop under the banner of annihilating the Buddhism sect. Hiss. Xiaohua suddenly inhaled sharply, seeming to understand something. He looked at Imperial Prince Lan. What else did your senior brother say about Jiasa Country? Senior brother said that the national teacher of Jiasa Country is too powerful, and that Chongling Princess is also a strategist. They must have seen the difficulty of the Buddhist sect establishing a country in Yuzhou, and first planned to use Taoism to establish Jiang Country. Now, Jiasa Country has been destroyed as expected, but Jiang Country still exists. If the Chongling Princess is a descendant of Jiasa Country, then the present Jiang Country is the original people of Jiasa Country. It's just that it changed from the Buddhist sect establishing a country to the Taoist sect establishing a country. These people's thoughts are too complicated. Xiaohua sighed. This old man can't do this kind of planning. What's the second matter? The second matter is that a Taoist country in Jing province that received the lot of the national teacher was just killed by the Immortal Palace. And this matter, this old man knows. Xiaohua frowned slightly, and then asked, how did Xiongyi know that the destroyed Taoist country was the one that received the lot of the national teacher? Master, our fortune gate has just been established, and does not have a mature source of information. Imperial Prince Lan answered, when this disciple was establishing a country, he would send a special disciple to be in charge of this matter. After all, without information, it is like being blind, and with information, you can take the initiative. Senior brother Xiong's information should have been sent by his former disciple. If he didn't personally investigate, then he got it from a place like Star Picking Tower. Usually he wouldn't be wrong. Chapter 38-22. By the way, your disciples have also come to the Soaring Dragon Mountain Range, right? Xiaohua nodded. Don't treat them unfairly. Senior brother Xiong Yi and most of my disciples have come. There are still some scattered all over the hidden Immortal continent who haven't had the time to come. His Highness Lan respectfully said, however, the disciples who have come are very satisfied with the situation in the Soaring Dragon Mountain Range. And these are some things this old man obtained before. You can discuss how to distribute them among yourselves. Xiaohua took out a few small Qinkuan bags and handed them over to His Highness Lan. In addition, if you have any special needs, or if Master forgets to give them to you, you can ask Master in time. Yes, Master. His Highness Lan took the small Qinkuan bags and carefully put them away without checking them. According to senior brother's arrangement, disciple has gradually begun to let some disciples arrange various kinds of medicinal fields and alchemy places in the mountain range. However, these things won't have any effect until 1,000 years have passed. Master knows. Xiaohua said, there are too many clues to establish a sect. Master will leave these chores to you. Master will be your backing. Master will give you whatever you lack. Master being so assured is also disciple's great fortune. His Highness Lan said with a smile. Moreover, disciple is even more fortunate to have master to guide disciples' cultivation. His Highness Lan's words were absolutely from the bottom of his heart. After Xiaohua came to the soaring Dragon Mountain range to arrange the array, he had separately guided Xiong Yi, Lan, and Li Xiang's cultivation 3 times. His Highness Lan didn't know the effects of others, but he was clear about his own background. Before His Highness Lan guided Xiaohua, His Highness Lan's cultivation hadn't made any progress for many years. Therefore, he wanted to see if he could make a breakthrough in the Jade Pavilion Conference. However, under Xiaohua's guidance, His Highness Lan suddenly felt that the bottleneck in front of him had suddenly disappeared. That layer of barrier in front of his eyes had suddenly disappeared. An indescribable feeling of enlightenment made him see the direction of his cultivation. Moreover, what made His Highness Lan excited was that the medicinal pills Xiaohua gave him were really effective. They were many times more effective than the medicinal pills he had obtained and taken before. Seeing his cultivation progress by leaps and bounds, His Highness Lan was really glad for his decision at that time. All right, stop flattering me. Xiaohua waved his hand and said, Go tell the disciples of Black Wind Mountain Range to return to Soaring Dragon Mountain Range. Be careful, don't attract the attention of others. In a few days, Master will go and deal with the matter of the elemental or vein. Yes, Master. Royal Highness Lan smiled, bowed and flew away. Looks like it's time for this old man to make a move. Xiaohua watched His Highness Lan fly away and smiled faintly. His hands once again formed seals and set up the array formation step by step. A few days later, the disciples of the Black Wind Ridge gradually returned. Xiaohua's arrangement of the Great Array had also come to an end. Xiaohua handed over the newly refined array flags and array talismans to Xiong Yi and the others, then flew to the Black Wind Ridge alone. Just as Imperial Prince Lan had said, there were a few more Confucian cultivators patrolling around Black Wind Mountain Range. However, these cultivators didn't deliberately attack, as if they were waiting for an opportunity. Xiaohua didn't care about these cultivators. They couldn't even sense Xiong Yi and the others leaving, so it was even more impossible for them to know that Xiaohua had arrived. Xiaohua once again took out the soil and examined it. After confirming that there was nothing unusual, he entered the ore vein and followed the tunnel that the Black Bear Spirit and the others had opened up. Over the years, the Black Bear Spirit and the others hadn't slacked off. The number of tunnels in the ore vein had increased by a lot, and the number of caves for storing primal stones had also increased by a lot. At this moment, whether it was the caves or the tunnels, they were all empty. Not a single primal stone had been left behind. Xiaohua was very satisfied as he flew to the end of one of the tunnels. Looking at the dazzling array of primal stones embedded in the ground, he released his divine sense. Although the soil of the primal stone or vein was abnormally tough, it was extremely difficult for the divine sense of an ordinary cultivator to penetrate. However, with Xiaohua's full strength, his divine sense still penetrated more than 10 miles. Collect! Xiaohua urged his divine sense. His divine sense was like a huge palm, instantly grabbing the soil layer that was dozens of miles wide, instantly digging out a hole that was dozens of miles wide. Hee. Looking at this hole, Xiaohua was a little proud. Damn it, this old man has already collected the metal, wood, and magnetic fields. What does this primal stone or vein count for? Wait until this old man has dug out this primal stone vein until it's the same size as the metal, wood, and magnetic field space. Thinking of this, a strange expression suddenly appeared on Xiaohua's face, as if he had thought of something. However, without waiting for him to think more, the soil layer above Xiaohua's head began to tremble. Streaks of dust and gravel fell from above the hole, and then the hole collapsed. With a loud rumble, Xiaohua was actually buried alive. Admittedly, the collapse of this hole was very powerful, but if it wanted to injure Xiaohua, it was not very likely. In a short moment, in the broken passage, Xiaohua's body flashed with a brilliant light, and he escaped from the soil layer in a somewhat sorry state. As soon as Xiaohua flew out, he immediately lamented. Damn it, This old man finally understands why those great cultivators don't rashly use their divine abilities. However, at this time, Xiaohua had other ideas. He did not have time to mutter anymore. He hastily formed a seal, and his figure continued to escape into the ground. After passing through the black fog, Xiaohua arrived at the original metal, wood, and magnetic field space. The metal, wood, and magnetic fields had already been taken away by Xiaohua, but the residual metal, wood, and magnetic forces still existed. This 3,650 acres of space was not filled with the black fog, and the black fog that isolated divine sense was still attached to the surroundings of the space. Yes, this space is indeed large, but it's extremely far from the ground. Moreover, there's still magnetic forces in the space, so there's no sign of it collapsing. Xiaohua opened his divine sense, and after looking for a moment, he inwardly pondered. Such a large space, with the protection of the black fog, won't be discovered by others. It's really secretive. Since this Xiao wants to set up a teleportation array in the hidden Immortal continent, it should be set up here. No one would think of it. Also, if the Immortal Palace comes to the Black Wind Ridge to look for this Xiao, that would be even better. Xiaohua thought again. The Black Wind Ridge has been destroyed by the Immortal Palace, and has become a wasteland. Who would pay attention to the Black Wind Ridge? This Xiao's teleportation array will not be known by others. Let's do it this way. Xiaohua laughed heartily as he flew out of the magnetic field space, and continued to plunder primeval stones. Xiaohua's thoughts were not wrong. He had obtained the Grand Universe Teleportation Token for a long time, and he had already comprehended the teleportation array inside, especially after activating the divine restriction. After he personally set up the Capital Star Array, he already had 80% confidence in setting up the teleportation array. Within his space, he had already obtained a lot of materials to set up the teleportation array. In addition to the huge stone teleportation array at the bottom of the Saint River, it was more than enough to set up 2 teleportation arrays. However, Xiaohua did not have the time, nor did he find a suitable place, so he had not set up the teleportation array. Of course, the most important thing was that this teleportation array was only useful when used in pairs. Xiaohua had not thought of where to set up the teleportation array. Even the divine sense mark he left behind on the snowy mountain in the Western Paradise was just to prepare for setting up the teleportation array. Now, if the teleportation array was really set up under the Black Wind Ridge, then the other end of the teleportation array should be at the snowy mountain in the Western Paradise. If Xiaohua wanted to set up the teleportation array, he would have to make a trip to the Western Paradise. Yes, I will first set up the teleportation array here, then this Xiao will make a trip to the Western Paradise and the Thousand Demons' Sacred Realm. This way, this Xiao will not have to spend too much time going to the other 2 places. Xiaohua thought as he used his mind to tidy up the primeval stone mine. This Grand Universe Teleportation Token, its origin is indeed mysterious, and the secrets within it are definitely strange. The Grand Universe Teleportation Token. It is far from what ordinary cultivators think. It is purely to reduce the pressure of the teleportation array. Not only does it have the array to set up the teleportation array, it can also record the location of the teleportation array that has already been set up and connect 2 or more teleportation arrays together. This kind of divine item, how could a devil general of the devil realm refine it? There is also Jianghu. After so many years, I wonder if he has already come out of the Nirvana realm. Presumably, not only has he grown up, his Buddhist cultivation is also astonishingly powerful, right? When this Xiao goes to the Western Paradise, I will still have to go to the Golden Mountain Temple to take a look. With the lesson of the collapse of the primeval stone mine, Xiaohua was already very careful when he collected the primeval stones again. Every time he collected the primeval stones, he did not collect as much as the first time, but the speed at which he released his mind and divine sense increased by a lot. Sometimes, when he saw that the shape of the primeval stone mine was different, he even increased the range of the primeval stones. As a result, Xiaohua became more familiar with the process, and the primeval stones in the primeval stone mine became fewer and fewer, just as Xiaohua was working hard to collect the primeval stones. In the sky above the 9 provinces of the hidden Immortal continent, where the heavenly fire, wind, and thunder were rampant, several colorful clouds suddenly flashed. These clouds immediately blocked the surrounding heavenly fire, wind, and thunder. As the clouds surged, a belt of light twisted and entwined out. When the belt of light formed a straight passage in the astral wind high up in the sky, dozens of banners fluttered in the wind. A group of immortal soldiers dressed in bright armor, holding various weapons, or riding on auspicious clouds, flew out from this passage. After the 100,000 immortal soldiers rushed out, another dozen immortal soldiers rode chariots that spewed out flames, clustered around several immortal generals and flew out. The immortal generals stood on the chariots, and their figures were blocked by the flames of the chariots, so their true faces could not be seen. However, these immortal generals were tall and sturdy, and the flames could not block the threatening evil chi of the immortal generals. The chariots were also hung with war banners. Some of the war banners had Qingyun written on them, some had Sun Palace written on them, and some had Great General written on them. Although the handwriting on the war banners was different, each war banner surged with multicolored light. Streams of awe-inspiring chi came from the void and rushed into the war banners, and the big characters on them also showed incomparable majesty. Chapter 38-23. 100,000 immortal soldiers flew out of the light belt tunnel and immediately flew towards the heavenly fire wind lightning. When they left the astral wind, they quickly lined up again. Dozens of immortal soldiers rode on heavenly horses and scattered in all directions. More than 10 captains stood in front of them, welcoming the falling war chariot. Boom boom. The war chariot spat out flames and stopped above the group of immortal soldiers. From within the flames, a dignified voice sounded, "Is this place the U region?" Reporting to the great general. The captain of the immortal soldiers closest to the war chariot hurriedly replied, "I have already sent soldiers to investigate. There will be news soon." Yes, the hidden immortal continent is rather sensitive during this period of time. Although we are under the orders of the Immortal Palace and have nothing to do with the Buddhist sect, if this were to fall into the mouths of some people, it would be a weakness for them to attack us. The voice was very low and deep as it slowly came out. This Jianghu country and Black Wind Ridge are extremely close to the immortal town. We should end the battle quickly and not delay the opportunity to leak the news. This subordinate understands. The immortal soldier hurriedly replied, "This subordinate will pass down the great general's order." After a short while, the immortal soldier that had gone to investigate returned with a message. The captain of the immortal soldiers hurriedly came to report, reporting to the great general, "This is the border between the Yu region and the Su province. It is not in the same direction as the immortal town." "All right, let's go." Just as the great general gave the order from within the flames, a sharp voice suddenly sounded out from another war chariot, "Lord True Monarch, after the Jianghu country's cultivators obtained the imperial advisor's lot, they actually took such a long time to establish a country. There must be something fishy going on. Why don't you lead the army to destroy the Jianghu country first, and I will head to the Black Wind Ridge to investigate." "Shut up." Without waiting for the voice to finish speaking, the great general's dignified voice shouted angrily, "How can you, the Hall of Enlightenment, dictate the orders of the army? Even if you want to investigate, you have to listen to this general's orders. My sons, we will split into 2 groups. Kwa Chong, you will bring your men and charge towards the Jianghu country and exterminate this Taoist country. The rest of you, follow this general to the Black Wind Ridge and exterminate the remnants of the Tao sect." On a battlefield, flames soared into the sky. Amidst the flames, a 30-meter tall giant spirit immortal general, dressed in shining immortal armor and holding a Xianhua axe, shouted loudly, "This general, Kwa Chong, will definitely not disappoint the general and exterminate the Tao sect's Jianghu country." With that, the immortal general named Kwa Chong drove the war chariot and led the tens of thousands of immortal soldiers down into the sky, disappearing without a trace. "Sun Gang." Seeing that Kwa had rushed away, the great general in the flames said coldly, "Didn't you want to follow this true lord to find the whereabouts of the imperial tutor's lot? Why didn't you follow Kwa Chong to Jianghu country?" Boom. The flames on the war chariot from which the sharp sound came just now were extinguished. Sun Gang's small figure appeared on the war chariot. I'll let the great general know. Although the imperial preceptor's lot is recorded in the spiritual official hall and records the names and other information of the cultivators of the Jiang country's Jiandao Gate, my Hall of Enlightenment feels that it's unlikely that this cultivator, who is only in the Golden Core realm, would be able to obtain the imperial preceptor's lot from Mount Yaotai. That's why I came to the lower realm this time to find the person who truly obtained the imperial preceptor's lot. Furthermore, I don't think that I can get any information from the Jiang country. You're not afraid of death, are you? The great general's voice was filled with disdain. With Kwa Chang's ability, he can protect your safety no matter what. You don't have to be afraid. Sun Jian. Sun Gang's little face flushed red with anger, and he said angrily, "Don't think that just because you are the Immortal Emperor's personally conferred Great General of the Sun Palace, true Lord Qingyin, you can look down on my Hall of Enlightenment. Don't think that just because I'm young, you can deceive me. The Jiang country is just a short distance away from the Black Wind Ridge. Why did you send the vanguard to the lower realms to suppress the Jiang country first, and not with him? Instead, you're dawdling here. Aren't you afraid that the Black Wind Ridge's evildoers will escape?" With a cold snort, the Scarlet Sun war chariot did not change at all. Sun Jian's voice came out from inside. "How can you call this true lord's name? If not for the ninth princess's face, this true lord would have killed you right here." Sun Gang jumped a few times on the war chariot, but he did not dare to say anything else. Sun Jian was right. "Do you know what a little kid is?" Sun Jian sneered on the war chariot and shouted again, "Everyone, send troops to the Black Wind Ridge." Tens of thousands of immortal soldiers accepted the order in a low voice and once again formed a formation and descended towards the Black Wind Ridge. Sun Gang, who was on the war chariot, bit his lips and followed Sun Jian to the Black Wind Ridge. Only he himself knew what he was thinking. The hidden immortal continent's Yaotai Star Lord Palace's Hall Master was killed. In the eyes of the Immortal Palace's Hall of Enlightenment, this was really not a big deal. It was not like it had never happened before. The simplest way was to change the Hall Master. However, this matter was getting more and more fermented under the intentions of the Jasper Flower Palace. Moreover, under the power struggle of the Confucian cultivators, this matter had also become a reason to kill the chicken to scare the monkeys. That was why the Immortal Palace sent troops to suppress the 10 nations. Sun Gang was not a fool. He naturally understood the new princess's intentions. When he received Xiao Hua's image from the Hall of Enlightenment, he was even more shocked. After passing this news to the School of the Emperor Star, he also paid attention to the news from the Spiritual Official Hall. After the founding of Jiang Country, the Spiritual Official Hall received the news from the Imperial Preceptor and found that the Imperial Preceptor of Jiang Country was only at the Golden Core realm. He was not at the nascent Soul realm as they imagined, nor was he Xiao Hua as the Jasper Flower Palace thought. Naturally, they also passed this news to the Hall of Enlightenment. Of course, at this time, the Immortal Palace had already begun to conquer the 10 nations of Taoism. No matter who founded Jiang Country, they would inevitably be killed by the Immortal Palace. However, the matter of the Longevity Town delayed the expedition for a while, and during this time, the Black Wind Ridge was also added to the scope of annihilation. Of course, the new princess also knew the news, but she could not show too much concern for Xiao Hua in front of others, let alone attract more attention from the Jasper Flower Palace. Sun Jian, the general of the Hall of Sun who was conquering the 10 nations of Taoism, was a trusted aide of the Immortal Emperor. Although he respected her, he would never listen to her. That was why Sun Gang volunteered. Sun Gang wanted to send a message to Xiao Hua in advance, but he was immediately noticed by Sun Jian. He also knew that this was a dead end. He could only act according to the situation before the two armies. As for whether he could save Xiao Hua, only the heavens would know. At this time, the Black Wind Ridge was no different from before. There were still some Confucian cultivators who were unwilling to give up wandering around. From time to time, they would fly to the Black Wind Ridge's great formation to attack a few times, and then flee far away. Although it was an incomplete capital star formation, it was enough to block the eye clarity technique and divine sense technique of these Confucian cultivators. No one knew that the Black Wind Ridge was already empty. Woo! A gust of wind blew out of nowhere, and then, like a layer of biting cold wind and frost, swept across the Black Wind Ridge. All the Confucian cultivators in the surroundings could not help but shrink their necks. An indescribable feeling of being spied on arose in their hearts. Who is it? Many Confucian cultivators raised their eyebrows and looked up in shock. In the sky above, the originally blazing sun was now accompanied by a gust of wind. Dark clouds poured out from all directions. These dark clouds did not carry any lightning, but the thick black color was enough to whet the hearts of the Confucian cultivators. Rumble. Suddenly, the sound of drums came from the dark clouds like mountains. The sound was like thunder, and the surrounding sky trembled slightly. The true qi in all the Confucian cultivators' bodies suddenly boiled and rushed out uncontrollably. Not good. The Confucian cultivators were shocked. Just as they were about to urge their cultivation methods to control their true qi, in the sky above the heavy clouds, layers of multicolored light rolled out. At this time, the multicolored light had already covered 1,000 miles around the Black Wind Ridge. Groups of immortal soldiers holding weapons arrogantly appeared in the clouds. The Immortal Palace's punitive expedition? The Confucian cultivators suddenly woke up, and a few of the younger ones shouted, "The Black Wind Ridge is going to be unlucky." Dong dong dong. The war drums sounded. In the flames, several war drums that were like the sun let out rumbling sounds. In the midst of the war drums, 2 sun chariots spat out flames and rushed out of the clouds. The Immortal Palace's crusade, the innocent cultivators forced back the 3 sects. The war chariots appeared and the war flags waved. A voice came from an unknown place in the clouds, accompanied by the sound of the drums. "Let's go!" How could the Confucian cultivators not know how powerful it was? Before they could see the flag on the war flags, they immediately used their flying techniques to escape. If the immortal soldiers attack, no one will be able to escape. As for the land that they were previously patrolling, they looked very far away and shrank back into the ground, disappearing in a moment. The war chariot stopped in the air and an immortal general flew out. He saluted and said, "Reporting to the great general, there is a Taoist formation on the Black Wind Ridge. This humble one has already investigated it. It is a high-level Taoist formation. If there is no accident, it should be the Taoist's great heavenly star formation. This humble one couldn't see the situation inside clearly." Did any Taoist cultivators escape? Sun Jian's voice was very calm, as if he didn't care about the great heavenly star formation. Aside from the 121 Confucian cultivators within 100 miles of the Black Wind Ridge, not a single cultivator escaped from the Black Wind Ridge. Set up an inescapable net. The immortal general obeyed. Not long after, more than 10,000 immortal soldiers descended from the clouds and landed in an oval shape above the Black Wind Ridge capital star formation. Many immortal soldiers took out their weapons and flew out. The awe-inspiring Qi pillar outside the Black Wind Ridge from before rumbled incessantly. Great General Sun. Sun Gang stood on the war chariot and sneered, "This place doesn't seem to be too far from the longevity town. With such a large formation, I'm afraid it has already attracted the Buddhist sect's attention. Is this your plan to intimidate them?" Sun Jian's figure didn't appear on the war chariot, so Sun Gang naturally couldn't see his expression. However, he did hope that Xiao Hua, who was inside the Black Wind Ridge, would be quick-witted and quickly escape from the formation. He would take advantage of the fact that the great heavenly star formation had yet to take shape and break through. Those who weren't from the Immortal Palace wouldn't know how powerful the great heavenly star formation was. Relying on the Taoist formation to resist stubbornly would definitely lead to death in the end. This wasn't something Sun Gang wanted to see. Chapter 38-24. Unfortunately, the inescapable net's power was not small, and the sound of the war drums was also very loud, but Xiao Hua, who was deep under the black wind ridge, could not sense it. Looking at the colorful clouds filling the sky and the countless golden rope-like engraved rule chains covering the entire black wind ridge like a big net, and the engraved rule chains even penetrated the ground, Sun Gang suddenly realized something. Maybe Xiao Hua was not in the black wind ridge at all? Xiao Hua was of course in the black wind ridge. At this moment, Xiao Hua was brimming with confidence and prepared to work harder to clean up the black wind ridge's source stone vein. Suddenly, an extremely strange aura appeared from underground, and then it instantly surrounded Xiao Hua's figure like mercury. Moreover, that aura didn't stop at all, and it continued to spread towards the surroundings. This aura overflowed the engraved rule chains, and Xiao Hua was very familiar with the power of order between the engraved rule chains. Xiao Hua was a little surprised. What is this? Could it be that there is a Heaven's Punishment prison crystal under the Black Wind Ridge? Thinking of this, Xiao Hua hurriedly gave up on the source stone vein and moved down. When he was close to that aura, he did not need to release his divine sense. Xiao Hua's eyes could already see that between that dark layer of soil, a layer of armor inscriptions flashed with a faint multicolored light like a small stream flowing slowly. That armor inscriptions were connected to each other, and it was extremely similar to the engraved rule chains on the Heaven's Punishment prison crystal. Xiao Hua frowned slightly and looked around. This faint multicolored light covered the entire ground, as if it was everywhere. What was special was that this layer of multicolored light was between the source stone vein and the metal and wood magnetic space. Xiao Hua could be sure that this multicolored light was definitely not there before, and was just born. Xiao Hua thought for a moment, and released his divine sense. Boom! Xiao Hua's divine sense had just touched the multicolored light when a huge thunderbolt rushed out from the engraved rule chains and pounced on Xiao Hua's Naiwen Palace along with his divine sense. The power of this thunderbolt was even more fierce than the Heaven's Punishment prison crystal. Xiao Hua's divine sense condensed and attacked the thunderbolt. In a loud noise, the thunderbolt was broken and retreated, and Xiao Hua's divine sense was shattered. Motherfucker! Xiao Hua's heart went cold. Looking at the densely packed Ming Law shackles under his feet, his scalp couldn't help but go numb. These are tens of thousands of Heaven's Punishment prison crystals. Even if I have the Demon Clan's Saint bloodline in my body, I'm afraid I can't get rid of it, right? Inside Xiao Hua's body, the 132 million small dots were constantly changing. The bloodline of the Absolute Saint was also constantly transforming Xiao Hua's body. However, this bloodline was known as the Absolute Saint. How could it possibly complete the transformation of the body in just a few years or a dozen years? Even if Xiao Hua had successfully obtained the inheritance of the demonic beast clan, it would still be impossible for him to break this strange engraving chain. No. Xiao Hua looked at the crisscrossing Ming Lu chains and suddenly realized, this thing definitely didn't exist originally, it was originally hidden in the ground. Instead, it had just been laid down by someone. Fuck, this Xiao's Black Wind Ridge has indeed attracted the attention of the Immortal Palace. This Xiao has been blocked in the Black Wind Ridge. Xiao Hua's regret only lasted for a moment. Although he had already given up on the Black Wind Ridge, in his plan, if the Immortal Palace's immortal soldiers and immortal generals came to exterminate the Black Wind Ridge, he should still meet the immortal soldiers and immortal generals face to face. He wanted the Immortal Palace to think that the Black Wind Ridge was Xiao Hua's lair and not pay attention to the soaring Dragon Mountain Range and other places. Alright, since the Immortal Palace's people have come, this old man will take a look at the difference between the Immortal Palace's Ming Law shackles and the Heaven's Punishment prison crystal's Ming Law shackles. Xiao Hua understood. With a wave of his hand, he took out the Kunlun mirror. Under the stimulation of his magic power, a six-colored light pillar loudly fell on the Ming Law shackles. Boom! In the light pillar that was several feet in size, the Ming Law shackles were particularly obvious. The same power of order between them very harmoniously sealed the entire space. When the Kunlun mirror's light pillar fell, the minute the light in the light pillar touched the Ming Law shackles, runes of the same size as the Ming Law shackles immediately appeared. These runes frantically respected the Ming Law shackles. Flickering crystal filaments were born between the Ming law shackles and the runes. These crystal filaments flickered and emitted a strong sound. Cracks that looked like spider silk faintly appeared in the light pillar. Gotcha! Just as the fine lines of the space cracks appeared, the Ming law shackles within several feet of Xiaohua flashed at the same time and pounced on Xiaohua. Xiaohua sneered. He didn't dodge or evade. He stimulated the yuanying in his body. The Kunlun mirror's brilliance once again flourished. Gotcha! Several thunderbolts fell on Xiaohua's body. The golden light protecting Xiaohua's body was shattered. His Taoist robe also turned into ashes. However, on his flashing dark golden skin, in addition to hundreds of tiny black lines, there was also the Ming law shackles that penetrated deep into his flesh that were more painful than the tip of a needle. Xiaohua didn't suffer any particularly big injuries. However, after this thunderbolt, even if the Kunlun mirror's light pillar increased again, the chains in the Ming law shackles became thicker and sturdier. The Ming law shackles runes far surpassed the Kunlun mirror's runes. Even more Ming law shackles pounced on the Kunlun mirror with flickering crystal filaments. Seeing this, Xiaohua understood that his Kunlun mirror might not be able to resist the entire Ming law shackles. If he wanted to escape, he would need to use other methods. At this moment, Xiaohua didn't have time to think anymore. The entire Ming law shackles trembled. Countless thunderbolts turned into a torrent and pounced on Xiaohua. An incomparably majestic voice came from the thunderbolts. Evil path, you dare to break my immortal palace's inescapable net? Why don't you come in front of this general and admit your crimes before being captured? The enormous thunderbolt forced Xiaohua to have no choice but to flee upwards. He originally wanted to take out another magic weapon, but when he heard this voice, he sneered and shouted, "What big words! This old man wants to see just how great your divine ability is to capture this old man." At this moment, high up in the sky, the immortal general in charge of setting up the inescapable net frowned. He urged his body to look down and then hurriedly flew to the front of the war chariot. He bowed and said, "Reporting to the great general, there are signs of the inescapable net being attacked under the Black Wind Ridge. What's the result? Did anyone escape?" "No." The immortal general hurriedly replied, "There are no signs of the inescapable net being broken." Sun Jian, who was on the war chariot, said indifferently, "Set up the formation. Prepare to use the inescapable net to attack the Dao Sect's great heavenly cycle star formation. When the formation is broken, capture all the evil path members of the Black Wind Ridge." "Yes, sir." The immortal general gave the order and waved the flag in his hand. Tens of thousands of immortal soldiers activated their bodies and surrounded the Black Wind Ridge. Seeing that not a single person had come out of the Black Wind Ridge, Sun Gang finally relaxed. No matter where Xiaohua went, as long as he was not in the Black Wind Ridge. Even if Xiaohua was in Jianghu country, with Hua Chang's strength, he might not be able to take Xiaohua down. But right at this moment, a gust of wind rose in the distance, and another war chariot swayed with flames as it flew over. Hua Chang's striking 30-meter figure appeared in Sun Gang's line of sight. Looking at Hua Chang and the tens of thousands of immortal soldiers behind him, Sun Gang maliciously guessed that Hua Chang had been defeated by Xiaohua. Why are you back so soon?" Sun Jian was also a little surprised, but seeing that Hua Chang and the rest did not look like they had been defeated, he asked curiously. Hua Chang drove the war chariot closer and bowed, reporting to the great general. Although the country of Jianghu was established by the Dao sect, there are very few Dao sect cultivators in the country, and there are very few of them. Under the siege of the city, these Dao sect cultivators were so scared that they pissed their pants. However, there is an unexpected matter that I have to report to the great general. I believe that the great general would not have thought of it. "Oh." Sun Jian was startled and asked, "What is it?" "After the Dao sect cultivators of the Jianghu country were killed by my subordinates, many Buddhist sect disciples flew out from the surroundings of the capital. There were even monk soldiers." "What? Buddhist sect? Monk soldier?" Sun Jian, who was inside the flames, was truly surprised. In the current situation, it was not wise to rashly go against the Buddhist sect country. Yes, it's the monk soldier. Hua Chong nodded, but what's strange is that the cultivation of these Buddhist sect disciples is relatively low, and none of them can be the master of a country. Thus, this general might as well go all out? You sure are bold. Sun Jian sneered. I told you to destroy the Tao sect's Jiang country, but you actually killed the disciples of the Buddhist sect. Hua Chong said in a low voice, feeling wronged. Great General, the Jiang country is indeed a Tao cultivator country. The imperial advisor's lot recorded that the Tao sect cultivators established a country. My Sun Palace is under the orders of the Immortal Emperor to annihilate the Jiang country. Not to mention the appearance of the Buddhist sect in the Jiang country, even if it was a Confucian cultivator. This general does not dare to disobey the orders of the Immortal Emperor. That's right, that's how it should be. When Sun Gang heard this, no matter what happened to Xiaohua, he was already in high spirits. He did not have a good impression of the Buddhist sect. Hearing that Hua Chong had killed a Buddhist sect disciple, he naturally cheered from the side, "Kill all these bald donkeys." Unfortunately, after Sun Gang finished speaking, he suddenly came to his senses. If Xiaohua was not in the Jiang country, where could he be? Wasn't he inside the Black Wind Ridge's Great Formation? Sun Jian muttered to himself on the war chariot. He was born to kill, and who knew how many vengeful spirits he had under his command? How could he be afraid of killing a few more Buddhist sect disciples? The only person he was afraid of was Sun Gang. Now that Sun Gang had spoken, what else could he say? Those who shouldn't be killed, none of them can be killed. Those who should be killed, not a single one of them can be let off. Sun Jian's voice was very indifferent, as if tens of thousands of lives were nothing more than a gust of wind. Don't worry, great general. Hua Chong laughed. This general's subordinates will definitely not touch the people of the secular world. They will not let any of the descendants of the royal family go. Sun Jian snorted, feeling that Hua Chong had said too much. Hua Chong looked at Sun Gang's war chariot, and then said to Sun Jian, Great General, this Black Wind Ridge seems to be rather troublesome. Great General, please wait a moment, and let this general be the vanguard. Go. Sun Jian nodded. Don't be careless. Sir. Hua Chong waved the axe in his hand and laughed. This general is not an idiot. How could this general dare to be careless with a Tao sect cultivator who could kill Kong Hongwu of the Star-Lord Palace? Chapter 3825. Hua Chong, what did you say? Sun Jian said sternly, Who told you that the cultivators of Black Wind Ridge were the ones who killed Kong Hongwu? This. Hua Chong heard the change in Sun Jian's tone and knew it was bad. He quickly bowed and said, This general deserves to die. This general deserves to die. Speak, who told you? Sun Jian hid in the flames and didn't show himself, but his tone was very strict. Dongfang Haohua. Hua Chong replied without hesitation. After this general followed the great general to conquer Jing province, Dongfang Haohua came to. This general told this general when we were drinking. Hua Chong wanted to say something else, but when he saw the flames on the sun chariot and Sun Jian's figure inside, he didn't say anything in the end. Hua Chong, this old man has told you more than once. Sun Jian said indifferently, We are immortal generals of the Immortal Palace. We only follow the orders of the Immortal Emperor. We only care about killing and conquering. Other things have nothing to do with us. Could it be that you've forgotten? Yes, this general knows his mistake. Hua Chong's huge body slightly bowed. It seemed like he was very afraid of Sun Jian. Go, this old man will remember this. Don't let others use you in the future. Sun Jian ordered. Hua Chong lowered his head and retreated. After flying for a while, he suddenly turned around and waved the broad axe in his hand in midair. The layers of clouds were torn in half by the broad axe. Hua Chong roared and shouted angrily, Damn evil path! Come out and die! Sun Jian's words clearly had a double meaning. Sun Gang was shy and his face was burning. However, he didn't care because he was young. Sun Jian, on the other hand, stood on the war chariot like an iron tower. He looked at the red-faced boy on the battlefield with a puzzled expression on his cold face. He really did not understand why the Hall of Enlightenment would send this boy over for no reason. However, since Sun Gang was holding the token, he could not be bothered to care too much. In front of 100,000 immortal soldiers, Sun Gang was nothing. Kwa Chong cursed a few times in the Black Wind Mountain, but no one came out. Kwa Chong was furious. Roar! Kwa Chong opened his mouth and spat out Zhen Qi. The Zhen Qi tumbled in the air and condensed into pillars of Zhen Qi from all directions. They crashed into Kwa Chong's body. Layers of inscriptions gushed out from Kwa Chong's body. The inscriptions were like clouds. Kwa Chong's body was supporting his body. In a moment, it grew to a size of 100 zhang. Puff! Kwa Chong's sub-body opened its mouth again, and a mouthful of three-colored true qi landed on the Xianhua broad axe. Layers of inscriptions also appeared on the surface of the Xianhua broad axe, and in a few breaths, it expanded to a size of 1,000 feet. Since you don't want to come out, if you want to be a coward, then take a look at my axe. Kwa Chong shouted and waved his arms. The Xianhua broad axe let out a thunderous roar in the air. Gray cracks faintly appeared on the sharp axe. Woo! The axe was like a mountain as it chopped down on the capital star formation. General Kwa? Another immortal general standing in the distance saw Kwa Chong swing his axe to attack the formation and quickly wanted to warn him. Unfortunately, just as he shouted, a huge crack appeared where the axe landed. It was as if the entire void had been split open by Kwa Chong. Kwa Chongaj. Suddenly, Sun Jian's voice came from the war chariot. Kwa Chong was stunned and somewhat puzzled. It was at this moment that he saw the crack suddenly sink. Then, there was a flash of brilliance at the deepest part of the crack. A seemingly cryptic rune moved slightly, and starlight appeared. A powerful force that suffocated Kwa Chong came rushing at him. This force was like a huge hand that pushed Kwa Chong's axe in the opposite direction and cleaved at Kwa Chong's sub-body. At this moment, a huge flaming arm extended from the Sun War Chariot and grabbed Kwa Chong's arm. Kwa Chong's 1,000-foot-tall body dodged to the side. Whoosh! The back of the huge axe whistled past the sub-body. It was completely out of Kwa Chong's control. The huge sub-body was even brushed by the huge axe, and a few feet of it was sliced off by the huge axe. Damn it! Kwa Chong could not help but curse. What kind of array is this? General Kwa. The immortal general in the distance hurriedly replied, "This is the Taoism's grand heavenly cycle star formation." See? Kwa Chong could not help but exclaim when he heard that. Grand heavenly cycle star formation? Isn't this the Taoism's long-lost ancient great array? How did it appear in Black Wind Ridge? Kwa Chong was so surprised that he stuttered, "Damn it!" Before the immortal general could reply, a rather arrogant voice came from the great array. "Which shameless thing actually dares to smash my door? Do you not want to live anymore?" While speaking, a figure slightly distorted and flew out from the capital star formation. Wasn't that Xiaohua? See, it really is. Seeing Xiaohua fly out like in the image, Sun Gang cried out in his heart. His eyes turned rapidly, wanting to warn Xiaohua of something. However, looking at the inescapable trap that had already been set up, and thinking about his cultivation that could almost ignore it, he could only sneak a glance at the distant Sun War Chariot, not daring to act rashly. "Are you that Xiaohua of the evil path?" Kwa Chong saw Xiaohua fly out and pointed with his wood-like finger. Xiaohua ignored Kwa Chong. He first looked at the flashing inescapable trap in the sky, then looked at the distant flaming battlefield. His gaze swept across the 100,000 immortal soldiers surrounding them before finally landing on Kwa Chong. He said coldly, "Are you immortal soldiers and immortal generals of the Immortal Palace? What immortal law did the Xiao violate to actually use immortal soldiers to destroy my Black Wind Ridge?" "Xiaohua, you killed." Kwa Chong immediately came to his senses and hurriedly corrected himself. "I am Kwa Chong, a vanguard official under perfected Lord Qingyuan of the Sun Palace. My Sun Palace was ordered by the Immortal Emperor to send troops to suppress Black Wind Ridge. As for what immortal law you violated, we don't know. If you know what's good for you, Follow us back to the Immortal Palace to apologize. There will definitely be an immortal official who will tell you the cause and effect. If you don't know what's good for you, don't blame me for being merciless and taking your life. All brawn and no brains. Simple-minded. Xiaohua curled his lips and said disdainfully, "You don't need to play this kind of trick to coax children in front of this Xiao. Your Immortal Palace has always treated my Dao sect cultivators as fish. You can conquer whoever you want. Now that you've attacked my Black Wind Ridge without any reason, you actually want this Xiao to bind my arms and apologize? Does the Immortal Palace still want face?" "Xiaohua, you know what you've done." Hua Chong sneered. "There's no need to quibble here. I don't want to listen anymore. If you don't want to follow me back to the Immortal Palace, I'll make my move. If you want to fight, then let's fight. Do you think this Xiao is afraid of you?" Xiaohua sneered and raised his hand to take out the wishful staff. "Ah, this kind of child's toy actually dares to embarrass itself in front of me. You really don't know the immensity of heaven and earth." Hua Chong couldn't help but laugh. His figure swayed slightly in midair. Xiaohua was now smaller than a child in front of Hua Chong, who was like a giant spirit immortal. Woo! As soon as Hua Chong's mocking voice fell, a gust of wind whistled. The heaven and earth essence qi within a few miles began to surge and rushed into Xiaohua's body. Xiaohua's body flashed with a dark golden brilliance and began to expand wildly. "Stop!" The immortal general controlling the inescapable net in the distance was shocked and hurriedly ordered. Sure enough, the inscriptions in the sky quickly overflowed, isolating the Black Wind Ridge from the outside world. Without sufficient heaven and earth essence qi, Xiaohua's transcendence golden body gradually slowed down. Can such a shameless method stop Grandpa Xiao? Xiaohua laughed a few times and no longer absorbed the heaven and earth essence qi. The 13200 small dots on his body began to rotate. Each dot was like an ancient evil spirit. The power of tens of thousands of stars in the sky rushed down, ignoring the inescapable net and rushing into Xiaohua's body. Xiaohua roared, and his transcendence golden body turned into the size of 100 feet in the blink of an eye. Hua Chong's mouth and nose were overflowing with a violent aura, but whether it was the eye-clearing technique or other magical powers, they could not detect any difference. Hua Chong was a little surprised. "Grow, grow, grow!" Xiaohua roared several times. In front of Hua Chong's stunned eyes, the wishful steel staff also grew to the size of 100 feet. It was not inferior to Hua Chong's axe. Sun Gang had already stood up from the chariot, his little face flushed with excitement. If it weren't for Sun Jian, he would have already clapped his hands. This Xiaohua was really awesome. "Eat this Xiao's staff." Xiaohua held the wishful steel staff in his hand, and the huge staff shadow crossed the sky and smashed towards Hua Chong. Seeing that the wishful steel staff had not yet fallen, the huge whistling sound of the wind and the suffocating strength had already hit. Hua Chong's heart was excited for no reason. Chapter 38-26. Hua Chong's words immediately reminded Xiaohua. He looked around and knew that if he didn't use his methods today, he wouldn't have a good ending. He unconsciously smiled coldly and said, "I don't know what you're talking about. If you want to fight, then fight. Don't use some innocent crime to find excuses for yourself." Hua Chong naturally also woke up. He mumbled and didn't dare to say more. He urged his body to once again fight with Xiaohua. One was the Immortal Palace's giant spirit immortal and the other was the demon race's Dharma idol. One was a refined imperial equipment and the other was a demon weapon refined with blood. One was a Confucian military school's secret axe technique and the other was a Taoist body cultivator's heavenly staff technique. The two of them did not use any other magical powers and just fought each other with brute force in midair. Soon, half an hour had passed. The two of them were indeed evenly matched, and there was no clear winner. The other immortal soldiers and immortal generals were fascinated by the fight, but the more the two of them fought, the more frightened they became. As the Sun Palace's vanguard, Hua Chong didn't know how many Taoist countries he had conquered and how many Taoist cultivators he had killed. However, he had never seen a cultivator who could fight with him like this. This Xiaohua in front of him didn't use any magic weapons, nor did he use any spells. He also didn't use any magic power. Just by relying on his physical strength and weapon, he was able to fight him to a standstill. What if Xiaohua used a Taoist magical power? Wouldn't he be defeated? While thinking, Hua Chong waved his Xianhua axe and shouted, "Xiaohua, I'm going to use a secret technique. Be careful." While Hua Chong was thinking, how could Xiaohua's heart not be in turmoil? He had always wanted to hide his cultivation. Even when he faced Duanmu Liangxing in the Misty Mountain Maze formation, he was still enduring. He let Duanmu Liangxing have the misconception that he was only at the upper 4th level of essence energy, or at most at the lower 5th level of essence energy. But now, fighting with Hua Chong like this, how could he not know that Hua Chong's strength had already reached the edge of the middle 5th level? If he defeated Hua Chong, the Immortal Palace would definitely know that he had already reached the middle stage of the 5th grade of elemental energy. However, this Hua Chong was only the vanguard. Naturally, there were other immortal generals after the vanguard. In the distant sky, Xiaohua's divine sense could not penetrate the chariot that was spewing flames. Presumably, it was the commander-in-chief of this expedition against the Black Wind Ridge, perfected Lord Qingyuan of the Sun Palace. What cultivation level was this perfected Lord Qingyu? Xiaohua didn't dare to imagine how the Immortal Palace would react if he defeated Hua Chong and then defeated the commander. However, if he were to escape, Xiaohua's gaze swept across the inescapable net and a bitter taste appeared in his mouth. Forget it. Hearing Hua Chong's reminder, a cold glint flashed across Xiaohua's eyes. Since we've come this far, it's hard to conceal our cultivation, so there's no need to regret it. The Soaring Dragon Mountain Range's Grand Formation has already been set up, and the Immortal Palace won't be able to discover our Fortune Gate's foundation in a short time. I don't believe that the Immortal Palace can cover the sky with one hand when the hidden Immortal Continent, the Thousand Demons' Sacred Realm, and the Pure Land are so big. Alright. Xiaohua laughed wildly as well. Since it's like that, then I won't hold back any longer. I'll let you see what it means by there's always someone stronger. It can't be, right? Hua Chong was a little dumbfounded. He muttered in his heart, but his hands didn't slack off. With a roar, he waved the Xianhua giant axe with both hands and slashed toward Xiaohua. However, at the same time that the broad axe chopped down, a 3-colored light emerged from the subbody that was 100 zhang in size. As the light surged, another 3 subbodies of different colors appeared out of thin air and surrounded Xiaohua in an instant. Every subbody looked exactly the same as the subbody in front of Xiaohua. Even the broad axe that chopped down at the same time similarly flickered with a cold light, blocking the direction that Xiaohua dodged in. It's a little strange. Xiaohua scanned with his divine sense and didn't perceive the difference between these 4 subbodies. Your 4 giant axes are also very sharp. Xiaohua muttered in his heart. He didn't open his delusion breaker Dharma eye to see the truth. Instead, his figure suddenly rushed forward. His arms gathered all the strength in his body and waved the wishful staff to smash the giant axe in front of him. At the same time, he released his divine sense and condensed it into a hammer, directly facing the giant axe on the left side. Boom! 2 loud sounds came out at the same time. Xiaohua's wishful staff hit Hua Chong in front of him and sent him flying 100 meters away. The giant axe in his hand had thousands of inscriptions on its handle and instantly shrunk like a child's toy. Looking at Xiaohua's left side, the hammer of divine sense also sent the giant axe flying. Moreover, the giant axe was extremely sharp. Xiaohua's divine sense was actually split in half. However, at the same time that Xiaohua's Naiwen Palace shook violently, the 2 hammer of divine sense crashed into one of Hua Chong's subbodies like meteors. Amidst a loud explosion, Hua Chong's avatar was pierced through. 2 massive holes appeared like a pair of soulless eyes. Fish. The 1,000-meter-sized avatar collapsed in a flash. It was even faster than melting snow. When the subbody clone collapsed, the other 3 clones had fear in their eyes. As the sound of their bodies collapsing rang out, Hua Chong's clone disappeared, and so did his main body. In fact, his body, which had gradually returned to its original size of 100 feet, was covered in layers of cracks that resembled spiderwebs. A bloody aura gradually spread out from the cracks. Damn it! Hua Chong had never imagined that he would actually fall into such a losing situation. It seemed that before he used his divine ability, he was still evenly matched with Xiao Hua. How could there be such a huge difference with just one strike? However, he didn't have the time to think any further. His intuition from the bloody battle told him that he was absolutely not a match for this Taoist sect cultivator, and he could only flee now if he didn't want to die. Hua Chong hurriedly moved his body, ignoring his injuries as he tried to escape. You want to leave? Xiao Hua's huge transcendence golden body sneered, and his big hand grabbed down from the air. In an instant, Hua Chong was imprisoned by the big hand for hundreds of feet. Kill! Hua Chong resisted stubbornly, waving his Xian Hua axe. Unfortunately, his axe was also broken by Xiao Hua, and it didn't show any special light. Break! The immortal general at the side naturally waved the formation flag in his hand. Above the inescapable net, a thunderous chain of Ming Lu issued a crackling sound, wrapping around Xiao Hua's large hand. Ah, troublesome! Xiao Hua had seen the power of the heavenly punishment prison crystal and knew that he couldn't compete with this chain of law. With a slight sigh, he hurriedly pulled back his big hand as if to avoid it. Seeing this, Hua Chong's heart relaxed slightly. Under the stimulation of his genuine qi, his body flew toward his chariot. However, the moment he relaxed, Xiao Hua's huge body suddenly flashed with lightning, and a string of phantoms was born in the lightning. In a few breaths, Xiao Hua was like a huge mountain flying above Hua Chong's head. In the past, it was always Hua Chong who used this kind of deterrence to scare his enemies. He never thought that there would be a day when he would be bullied. Ah! Hua Chong couldn't help but scream. As soon as he screamed, Xiao Hua's big hand grabbed him again like catching a chicken. How dare you! The immortal general who set up the formation obviously couldn't save him in time. Sun Jian on the sun chariot certainly couldn't ignore it, but after hearing his soft reprimand, the flame on the sun chariot turned into a flying arrow, flashing over thousands of feet and shooting straight toward Xiao Hua's big hand. Although Xiao Hua was very confident in his transcendence golden body, he still didn't dare to rashly collide with the fire arrow. He raised his big hand again and dodged the flame arrow in a flash. Phew! Hua Chong breathed a sigh of relief again. His body flew a few hundred feet in an instant. Seeing that he was close to the sun chariot, suddenly, another kind of suffocating aura appeared, as if an invisible big hand had appeared out of thin air and tightly grabbed Hua Chong. How dare you! The flame arrow that had just flown by suddenly exploded, as if Sun Jian was angry, turned into thousands of fire points and rushed toward Xiao Hua. Hee hee! Xiao Hua sneered. His big hand didn't hesitate and grabbed upward. The innumerable flames immediately froze under Xiao Hua's universe in the sleeve technique. However, just as Xiao Hua was about to extinguish the flames, rumble! The innumerable flames exploded with a loud rumble, causing Xiao Hua's large hand to be abruptly lifted up. However, although the flames were powerful, the dark golden light on Xiao Hua's large hand flickered slightly, and it was not damaged at all. When Xiao Hua raised his big hand, his face suddenly changed slightly and he roared like Sun Jian. Chapter 3827. Xiao Hua, don't think that just because you have an immortal general of my Sun Palace, this true monarch will hold back. Sun Jian replied decisively, in this inescapable net, this true monarch has 10,000 ways to capture you. Ha! Xiao Hua laughed and raised Hua Chong. You can try. If you don't put your vanguard's life in your eyes, you can come at me. This Xiao can't guarantee that you won't crush Hua Chong into flesh and blood when you try. Oh, right, my Dao sect seems to have another method. This Xiao also wants to try it. Can I crush Hua Chong's soul at the same time? How dare you! The flames around Sun Jian rushed into the air again. He was obviously extremely angry. Great General! Hua Chong struggled with all his might and shouted, Don't care about this general's life or death. Quickly kill this evil cultivator. Shut up. Sun Jian scolded, scaring Qua Chong into shrinking his head. He knew that Xiao Hua suddenly released his magic power to let him speak. This was Xiao Hua's plan to lure the enemy. Xiao Hua. Sun Jian pondered for a moment. The flames around his body suddenly disappeared, revealing his true body. He said, "Look at who I am." Sun Jian? When Xiao Hua saw Sun Jian, who had thick eyebrows, big eyes, a lion's nose, and a tiger's mouth, he was slightly stunned. Then, he mocked himself, "I really didn't expect you to be the great general of the Immortal Palace." Sun Jian ignored Xiao Hua's sarcasm and said indifferently, "When this son obtained the emperor's decree, I also obtained your image. This son obviously knows that the enemy this time is you. However, this son is a great general of the Immortal Palace. Therefore, this son can't violate the emperor's decree because of some previous friendship. Moreover, to tell you the truth, I've already decided to follow the Celestial Emperor's order to annihilate your Black Wind Ridge and capture you to the Ling Yun Palace. I'll personally plead for mercy on your behalf and ask the Celestial Emperor to forgive me with my status as a great general. Then I really have to thank Lord True Monarch." Xiao Hua laughed and said, "However, this Xiao is a remnant of the Dao sect. I don't dare to associate with Lord True Monarch of the Immortal Palace. True Monarch, you don't need to worry about your former friendship. You should only worry about your vanguard. I'm sure True Monarch already has a plan in mind. No matter how high True Monarch's cultivation is, no matter how fierce this inescapable net is, as long as I'm determined, Qua Chong's life will be in my hands." "That's right. You have the ability to do so. This son has long known about it." Sun Jian nodded and raised his hand, throwing a universe bracelet into the air as he said, "This is what I owe you. Take it." I didn't expect Lord True Monarch to be such a trustworthy person." Xiao Hua stretched out the wishful steel staff and picked up the Heaven and Earth bracelet. He was not afraid of Sun Jian's tricks and directly put the Heaven and Earth bracelet into the space. Then he said, "Presumably, once this thing is returned, you and I will no longer have any entanglements. Are you going to make a move?" "That's right. Xiao Hua, if you are a man, then release Qua Chong. This son can give you a guarantee. If you defeat this son can let your Black Wind Ridge live." Xiao Hua hesitated. He had seen Sun Jian's strength. Previously, he might be stronger than him, but now, Sun Jian may not be his opponent. But then Xiao Hua narrowed his eyes and asked faintly, "What if this Xiao doesn't release him?" "Then, you are not the man this son has seen before." Sun Jian frowned, "And even if this son lets you live, this son will kill your Black Wind Ridge until blood flows like a river." "Okay, you are a man. Your Immortal Palace is full of men." Xiao Hua waved his hand disdainfully. Pucci. Sun Gang, who had been paying attention to the situation in the distance, couldn't help but laugh. When Xiao Hua said this, the new princess who was concerned about Xiao Hua naturally became a woman. Xiao Hua glanced at the boy and ignored him. Sun Jian's face changed, and he said in a deep voice, "So, you are determined to cut off all ties with this son?" "That's right." Xiao Hua nodded, "But this Xiao is unworthy. Now that this Xiao has fallen into the hands of the Immortal Palace, this Xiao's life is no longer in this Xiao's hands. Moreover, this Xiao has doubts as to whether True Monarch can save this Xiao's life. In a matter of life and death, this so-called kindness, if it's cut off, then so be it." "You don't believe this son?" "Sigh, Sun Jian, it's not that this Xiao doesn't believe you." Xiao Hua sighed and pointed around. "The tens of thousands of immortal soldiers and generals besieging my Black Wind Ridge must be your subordinates. But can you guarantee that these immortal soldiers and generals are wholeheartedly loyal to you? This Xiao doesn't know how many palaces your Immortal Palace has, and how many generals you have, but this Xiao is sure that there must be someone who leaked the news today. If you have the heart, why did you reveal your relationship with this Xiao at this time? You only need to use the excuse that Qua Chong was captured by this Xiao to let this Xiao and Black Wind Ridge live. This is a reasonable reason in front of the Immortal Emperor." But you actually said it in front of so many people. Do you want this Xiao's life or Hua Chang's life? Or do you want your own life? This son knows what you're talking about. Sun Jian said indifferently, but this son is true monarch Qingyun, personally conferred by the Immortal Emperor, and also a general of the Sun Palace. This son does things openly and honestly, and disdains to do such shady things. Yes, it's because you're so open and honest that this Xiao doesn't dare to entrust this Xiao's life to you. He slightly raised the formation flag in his hand and a ray of light shot through the inescapable net. Looking at the way to live and then looking at Sun Jian's heartbroken expression, Xiao Hua slightly frowned. Sun Jian's words moved his heart. After all, Xiao Hua and Sun Jian worked together to kill the strange insect in the void. Xiao Hua's strength had already shown that he was at the lower 5th level of origin energy. If Sun Jian wanted to, he would have already reported to the Immortal Palace. Xiao Hua might not be able to live freely in the future. If Sun Jian wanted to capture him, he would definitely have a hard fight with him. But why didn't Sun Jian reveal his strength to the Immortal Palace? But at this moment, Xiao Hua didn't have time to think too much. He coldly waved his hand and said, "Lord True Monarch, don't think too much. This Xiao is the vanguard that captured your Sun Palace. You have no choice but to let this Xiao go. Even if you say so much, this Xiao won't accept your kindness." "You don't need to accept my kindness. This true monarch disdains to make you accept my kindness." Sun Jian waved his hand. "This true monarch will let you go today, but the next time this true monarch sees you, will definitely meet and capture you." "Ha!" Xiao Hua laughed loudly. He held the Kuachong in his hand and calmly flew to the gap of the inescapable net and said, "If you want to see this Xiao, then go ahead. This Xiao doesn't want to see you. Wait until you're no longer a man, then we'll talk." Chapter 38-28. After Xiao Hua finished speaking, he didn't hesitate at all. His body shrunk slightly and he flew out of the gap in the inescapable net. At this time, although the inescapable net had a gap of several tens of zhang, there were hundreds of engraved chains cruising inside like poisonous snakes. They were waiting for Xiao Hua to be careless and immediately pounce on him to kill him. Xiao Hua flew to the gap and suddenly stopped. He turned his head and looked at the flag-bearer with a strange expression. Sure enough, the flag in the flag-bearer's hand was slightly trembling. Seeing Xiao Hua's gaze sweep over, the flag-bearer's face revealed an unnatural expression. Xiao Hua's left hand shook the motionless Kuachong in an extreme display of strength. Then he swaggered out of the gap. Lightning flashed around Xiao Hua's body as he prepared to fly in the direction of the Longevity Town. But at this time, rumble? Several huge rumbling sounds came from all directions of the Black Wind Mountain Range. The entire sky suddenly darkened. Several huge shadows were like distorted shadows cast down from the distant sky. Several terrifying divine senses swept over from the sky in an unbridled manner, and the suffocating aura surged over as well. Xiao Hua turned pale with fright. His hand involuntarily exerted strength. Hua Chang's eyes rolled. He was almost crushed to death by Xiao Hua. Little Sun Jian, although this old man and the others came late, I still saw your defeated appearance. I really didn't expect Master Xiao of the Black Wind Mountain Range to be so powerful. You could still safely escape from 100,000 celestial soldiers. An arrogant voice seemed to come from all directions. It was like a thunderclap falling down. Sun Jian, don't you feel ashamed? You are the dignified Sun Palace's true monarch Qingyuan. You actually let someone escape like this. Don't you feel ashamed? Come out. This old man will let you capture this old man and report back. See. Xiao Hua sucked in a breath of cold air. He seemed to understand something and said in surprise, could it be the Grand Mist Ancestor? Sun Jian didn't fly out of the inescapable net. Instead, he narrowed his eyes and looked at the rapidly changing sky. He coldly snorted and said, just a thief who escaped from the Penglai immortal realm. How can this true monarch make a move? Even if you're not afraid of being embarrassed, This true monarch is afraid of dirtying my hands. Daoist Xiao. A rainbow flew over from afar and stopped not far away from Xiaohua. After the rainbow faded away, Daoist Qing Su's figure was revealed. He cupped his hands toward Xiaohua and said, "I have come to save you under the orders of the Grand Mist Ancestor." However, it seemed like there was no need for that now. Daoist Master Xiao is indeed the champion of the three armies. 100,000 heavenly soldiers are nothing to him, as expected of the person valued by the patriarch. Hee, thank you, fellow Daoist Qing Su. Thank you, ancestor, for your kindness. Xiaohua replied with a smile. This Xiao didn't expect that ancestor would send you all to help this Xiao. Nothing else. Hidden immortal Dao cultivators are one family. Daoist Master Qing Su says with a smile. Daoist Xiao is in trouble, how can we just stand by and watch? Now that fellow Daoist is out of danger, why don't you come with me to pay a visit to the Grand Mist Ancestor? Sigh, I also want to pay a visit to the Ancestor. Xiaohua sighs. However, this Xiao has other important matters. I hope that fellow Daoist can bring eyes respect and apologies. When this Xiao has the chance, I'll definitely pay a visit. Daoist Qing Su is somewhat helpless. However, he came a step too late and can't show Xiaohua any kindness. Therefore, he can't force Xiaohua. He can only cup his hands and say, since that's the case, I won't force you. Quick! Xiaohua chanted an incantation and pointed at the Grand Universe Teleportation Token. A crystal thread fell from Xiaohua's finger into the Grand Universe Teleportation Token. Chapter 3829. Buzz. The Grand Universe Teleportation Token in midair made a strange sound. A faint green color began to flash in the void within a 1-foot radius. It looked extremely strange. As the strange sound appeared, an even greater movement rippled in the void. The void swelled as though Xiaohua was using green seal text. Xiaohua was a little surprised. Seeing the teleportation array in this state, how could he not know that the sacrificial refining of this teleportation array was related to the green seal text of soul cultivators? Xiaohua hurriedly released his soul consciousness. Indeed, several soul strands had appeared around the Grand Universe Teleportation Token. These soul strands extended out from the Grand Universe Teleportation Token and entered the void. The grayish-white air current in the void started to revolve around the soul strands. Waves of green seal text sounds were emitted from this vortex. Looking at the Grand Universe Transference Token again, as Xiaohua activated his technique, it gradually expanded. The dark green brilliance gathered into a ball, and even more soul strands extended out from the void and stuck onto this ball of light. Similarly, even more vortexes appeared around the Grand Universe Transference Token. In the end, it actually formed a spatial crack that was invisible to the naked eye. Go! Xiaohua observed and activated his magic power. The Grand Universe Teleportation Token fell into the teleportation array that was as silent as a monster. Like a spark falling into a withered leaf, the green brilliance of the Grand Universe Teleportation Token instantly lit up the huge teleportation array. After this brilliance, that strange fluctuation spread out from within the teleportation array and passed through the entire teleportation array in a few breaths. Boom! The ball of light around the Grand Universe Teleportation Token began to expand again and drown the entire teleportation array inch by inch. As the ball of light expanded, the vortex in the void also pushed the silent teleportation array and began to emit a roaring sound from the inside out. It was like the roar of a monster that had woken up from a deep slumber. Xiaohua watched as the entire transmission array began to revolve like a giant stone ball. Sounds that sounded like green seal characters began to reverberate within the magnetic space. His brows unconsciously furrowed. Obviously, the teleportation array in front of him was different from the one he had seen in Sky Patrol City. He did not know if his teleportation array was successful. It took a few hours for the Grand Universe Transference Token's green light to cover the entire teleportation array. Moreover, the entire teleportation array was rotating in different ways. It was as though there was a strange giant hand pushing it, and it didn't seem like it would stop. Xiaohua took a deep breath as his hands started to form seals, and a solemn expression appeared on his face. Following Xiaohua's incantation, the huge ball of light began to slowly recede from the outermost edge of the transmission array. This receding speed was even slower than before. Every inch of movement consumed a huge amount of Xiaohua's spiritual power. This continued for several days. Xiaohua's face was pale. With the help of the green-robed Xiaohua twice, the huge green light finally shrank to the area around the Grand Universe Shifting Token. Quick! With the incantation for the last time, Xiaohua's figure swayed, and he actually sat in the air limply. The green light emitted an intense brilliance around the Grand Universe Shifting Token. A strange rune appeared. This rune was not green seal text, but it was flashing with green light. Puff! The rune landed on the Grand Universe Shifting Token. The Grand Universe Shifting Token shook violently for a moment before becoming still. At this moment, all the sounds disappeared, the void disappeared, and the teleportation array stopped moving. It was as though Xiaohua had never cast a spell. The exhausted Xiaohua waved his hand, and the Grand Universe Shifting Token landed in his hand. Xiaohua scanned it with his spiritual sense, and a strange fluctuation and imprint emerged from it. Xiaohua understood that this imprint was the location of the teleportation array in front of him. If he wanted to set up a teleportation array that was connected to this teleportation array, he had to use this imprint. Otherwise, he would not be able to connect to this teleportation array. If I'm not mistaken, the teleportation array of my Taoism should be derived from the teleportation tunnel of soul cultivators. Xiaohua put away the Grand Universe Shifting Token. As he closed his eyes to rest, he thought to himself, the teleportation tunnel of soul cultivators that I saw in the Misty Mountains is the real teleportation array. The teleportation tunnel of soul cultivators looks simpler than this teleportation array, and the distance is also longer. Unfortunately, there seems to be no method to set up a teleportation tunnel in the millions of Meng Mountains. Who knows where this secret technique is lost? Also, after 5 years of cultivation with the support of the Netherworld fruit, Soul Cultivator Xiaohua's 9 heavens of spirit origin had long reached the peak of Heart Heaven. But for some reason, the gap between Heart Heaven and Soul Forming Heaven was so tenacious. Even with the help of Whitey, he could not break through. What should he do? After all, the gap between Heart Heaven and Soul Forming Heaven is not a simple bottleneck. From the perspective of soul cultivators, it is the difference between soul scholars and shamans. There must be some secrets that I don't know about. Soul cultivators, even if I am about to reach the shaman realm and enter the 3rd heaven of spirit origin, I am still so mysterious. Xiaohua had consumed a lot of magic power this time, so he had to rest for more than a month to recover. After he put away the spirit stones he needed for the teleportation array, he circulated his magic power and left the magnetic space. Looking at the faint black fog lingering within 100 li radius, Xiaohua was very satisfied. He knew that there would be very few cultivators coming here in the future. Finally, Xiaohua released his soul sense and carefully scouted the area within 1,000 li radius. After confirming that there was no immortal palace, he flew towards the soaring Dragon Mountain range. Xiaohua's several years of closed-door cultivation were not just for setting up the teleportation array and cultivating. Many times, he would fly back to the soaring Dragon Mountain range to set up the incomplete Grand Formation. Therefore, when he flew back to the soaring Dragon Mountain range this time, the Fortune Gate's disciples did not know what he was doing outside. They just thought it was a simple trip. Although the soaring Dragon Mountain range's Grand Formation was not as detailed as the teleportation array, it covered a large area. It was also different from the Black Wind Ridge's Capital Star Formation. After Xiaohua returned to the soaring Dragon Mountain range, it took him more than a month to set up the Grand Formation. On this day, Xiaohua was in midair. He seemed to be struggling as he made a grabbing motion with his hand. Within 1,000 li radius, the wind and clouds surged, and the scenery turned into a stream of light that fell into his hand. Then, a crisp, kacha sound was heard, and a palm-sized crystal plate appeared in Xiaohua's hand. Xiong Yi and the others who were standing respectfully in the distance and carefully observing Xiaohua's grand formation had an illusion in their eyes. It was as if a layer of mist was gushing out from the soaring Dragon Mountain range, but this mist was thinner than the clear morning fog. After it gushed out, it dissipated with a kacha sound. However, after the mist dissipated, the entire soaring Dragon Mountain range had an indescribable change. Xiong Yi released his soul sense and carefully observed. After a long time, he withdrew his soul sense and said in a low voice with admiration, "Junior brothers, did you notice the difference?" Of course. Li Xiang lowered his voice. The scenery of the soaring Dragon Mountain range is completely the same as before, but everything is completely different. Ordinary cultivators can't discover the location of our sect even if they directly flew over the mountain range, let alone flying over the sky. It's even more impossible for them to know that they have already fallen into the grand formation. Senior brothers are right. The flowers are not flowers, the mist is not mist. The soaring Dragon Mountain range is no longer the soaring Dragon Mountain range of the past. Fu Ji when prostrated himself in admiration and said, "Master's grand formation Dao has greatly improved these past few years. It seems that no matter how much I cultivate, I can't see Master's back." "It's not just the grand formation Dao," Imperial Highness Lan said with a smile. "I don't know where Master went to train during this period of time, but every time he comes back, I can feel that Master is different. However, I can't detect Master's realm at all." "Let's go, Master is calling us." Seeing Xiaohua waving his hand in the distance, Xiong Yi hurriedly reminded them. The four of them flew and landed in front of Xiaohua. "Master has worked hard." Xiong Yi and the others bowed. "Hee, it's nothing," Xiaohua said with a smile. "Setting up a formation is the same as cultivating. Master has been setting up a formation for a few years, and Master has benefited greatly." Yes, senior brother was just envious of Master just now. He said that every time he sees Master, he feels that Master is more profound and unfathomable. Already profound and unfathomable, can it still be more unfathomable? Xiaohua smiled and said, "My Taoism's 3,000 great Taos, each of them is unfathomable. You all have your own opportunities, so there's no need to be envious of Master. When your cultivation reaches a certain level, you'll understand what Master is doing now." Everyone's expression turned cold, and they hurriedly bowed and said, "Many thanks for Master's reminder." "Xiong, ring the bell, this old man has something to instruct." Xiaohua waved his hand and ordered. Xiong didn't dare to be negligent and hurriedly transmitted his voice. Strangely, although his transmission landed in the soaring Dragon Mountain range, no one responded. "Ha!" Xiaohua lightly smiled. He waved the crystal token in his hand, and a faint light fell into the mountain range. At the place where the mountain range landed, a red cloud emerged like a fountain and landed right under everyone's feet. "Let's go, the great array has already been sealed. Even a fourth-grade essence energy would not be able to send a message inside." As the rosy cloud descended, the scenery in front of Xiaohua and the others flashed slightly. The mountain range was still the same mountain range, and the forest was still the same forest. However, between the mountain range and forest, there were some towering palaces standing there. Xiaohua smiled and flew directly to the largest palace on the mountain peak. Before Xiaohua landed, the sound of a golden bell rang in the mountain range. Dozens, or even hundreds of rays of brilliance flew out from various parts of the mountain range and gathered toward Xiaohua's landing spot. The palace that Xiaohua landed on looked dazzling and magnificent. It was close to several hundred zhang tall, and there was a bright and colorful signboard on top of it. The words "Fortune Dao Palace" were written in large letters.